What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Limited Resources. This is episode number 605. My name is Marshall. I'm one of your Limited Resources, and joining me on the line all the way from Denver, Colorado, it's Luis Scott-Vargas. Luis, how you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. First week of the new set, always a ton of fun to draft, and I, at this point, completed all the dungeons, so I feel like an accomplished adventurer.
I have not ventured into the bad dungeon yet. All my decks have wanted to do either the middle, or if I have a repeat effect, I'll do the one on the left, the long one, the Mad Mage one. But every time I look at that one, I'm like, am I really not going to be able to get through the dungeon quick enough? I'm like, no, it's fine. I'll just take the medium dungeon and I'll get through that as well. I'm curious to see if I do end up with a deck that really, really wants to go down that road. Yeah, set's been cool. You and I were discussing before the show, and of course, when we do our first impression show next week, we'll really get into it. But has a core set feel, which I didn't anticipate, but still complex enough to keep it interesting. It doesn't feel fully like a core set, and that's a kind of an interesting balance that they've hit with that. And I think it is in part due to the dungeons. The die rolling hasn't felt as dynamic. It's just like it happens and you're like, okay, I guess this card does this now, as far as complexity goes. But the dungeons do. We're going to be talking about the rares and mythic rares on the show this week. So we're going to go over every single rare, every single mythic rare. I'm really curious to see what they throw at us. Cause yeah, we got our magic missile and our bag of holding last week, which are the kind of things. But I mean, I'm assuming there's ubiquitous characters or famous characters in D&D that are represented here, or at least some type of archetype for that. And I'm assuming that they're going to hit that pretty hard here with a lot more freedom to design with rares and mythic rares. And we're going to go over every single one of them this week. Before we do, I want to mention our sponsor, channelfireball.com. Make sure you check them out for anything you need magic related. That's really can be your one-stop shop. You know, you can hit up the singles, the sealed product. You can go over there and get high-level content with CFB Pro. There's also the free content as well, so it's not, all behind the paywall. But, if you want that really in-depth deck guides and that kind of stuff, well, you know what? You have to pay somebody to do that. And that somebody needs to be somebody who really knows what they're doing, has put the understanding in. And that's where you can get that is CFB Pro, kind of behind the scenes there. Again, if you'd like to get your order in for Adventures in the Forgotten Realms, go for it as well there. You can order stuff up and they'll send it to you just as soon as possible. If you do pick up anything over at CFB, I'd love it if you'd use the affiliate code LR. It helps out the show. It lets them know that we sent you over there, and we do appreciate that. The show is also brought to you by you via the Patreon. It's a direct, you can support the show directly. We have it set up where basically whenever we put up a show, it triggers the Patreon. You can do it monthly as well, but we decided against that because this way it's very direct. If we do 3 episodes in a month, then that's what you get charged for. If we do 5, then that. So it links it directly to what you get rather than some kind of arbitrary days have gone by thing or whatever. And that's just one of the reasons that we went with Patreon and why we continue to say there is because they're transparent. Face value, exactly how it works. You can change it at any time. There's never any commitments or anything like that. You can leave, you can come back, you can go up, you can go down. You can change it to however it suits you best. And you can find out all the information and more. And, you get a thank you card and an LR sticker in the mail, whatever, even at the lowest level. We really wanted to make sure that anybody who took the time and effort to support us over there got something cool. And then, as you kind of go up, you get access to some neat behind the scenes stuff as well. It's patreon.com/limited resources. The link is in the show notes, down below, and you can always find it. So, Luis, why don't we go over the grading scale overview, because we're going to be giving these cards grades on the same scale that we gave them last week, but it ends up playing out a little bit differently with rares and mythics.
So we're still going to use the grading scale of A through F with the 2 subgrades, and we'll go over that. But like Marshall mentioned, here's where a lot of A's and F's live, because rares and mythics tend to have the biggest bombs in the set, the best cards in the set. Almost every set, you look at the top, 10 cards, they're generally all rare and mythic, maybe one uncommon sneaks in there. You're going to see a lot more A's, but likewise, you're going to see a lot more like D's or F's of just cards that are just clearly not really suited for limited play for a variety of reasons. They cost 15 mana. They do something super specific that you need a whole deck built around and what have you. So we're going to go over all those. The A's, of course, are your bombs, your game winners, the cards that are, good in many situations, especially when behind, and just the overall best cards in the set. Looking at the last set, Strixhaven, you had Blot Out the Sky, Mascot Exhibition, Crackle with Power. These are the cards you look for in a sealed deck, and your heart feels with dread when you see one in game one of a 3-game match. Bs are cards that actively pull you towards their colors. So these are cards that would get you to go into red or go into green, or in this case, a color pair. So we're talking cards like Killian or Quandrix Apprentice. Cs are playable. These are your average cards, the Pawns of Limited, and you're not going to see that many in rares, though some, of course, will get this grade. You're talking cards like Field Trip, Expel, Arrogant Poet. Ds are the cards that are playable, but you'd prefer not to run them. They're mediocre to junky cards, often situational, high setup costs, too expensive. Just cards in general where you look at your deck and you're like, I wish I didn't have to play these two cards. Cards like Biograph, Tome Shredder, Barog, Befuddler. Fs are cards that are just virtually unplayable in all scenarios. Cards that cost, again, 1 million mana or do something super narrow, Culmination of Studies or Verdant Mastery. And then we have 2 subgrades, sideboard cards that you would not start, but you would sideboard in, and they could be really good out of the sideboard. Very few rares and mythics end up being sideboard cards. And then build around. There's actually a lot of these in the rares and mythics. These are cards that don't do much or anything on their own, but if you build around them properly, give them the right support, they can be the best cards in your deck. Cards like Cody or Reflective Golem.
Right. And then as far as the order that we're going to go in the cards or go through the cards,
we're going to, again, go from lowest casting cost to highest casting cost just so you get a better sense. In the rares and mythics, it's less important. I actually was really pleased with how it came out for the commons and uncommons, but we're going to continue it with the rares just for consistency and so we can get a sense of the casting costs of the rares when you look at it. Like, for example, we're going to start with a white here, and they have 1 1-drop, 4 2-drops, and then 3 3-drops, 2 4-drops, and 3 4-drops. So not a very high curve. It's actually kind of interesting on the rares and mythics. Again, doesn't matter as much as commons or uncommons, but still better than alphabetical.
Okay, so let's get into it then. We'll start off with white, and our first rare, and it is a regular rare, is Paladin class. It's white, and it is an enchantment class. So again, you can gain the next level of the ability by paying the amount of mana that it shows at sorcery speed. So your baseline ability, level 1, is spells your opponents cast during your turn cost 1 more to cast. So it mildly taxes your opponent. This isn't really worth much, though, at face value, like a mild annoyance, but it's pretty play-aroundable, right? Yeah,
it's the sort of thing where because Paladin class comes out and this always has this effect, most of the time your opponent isn't going to get completely hosed by this. Right. Because yes, the dream scenario for this ability is your opponent left up 2 mana, rouse the alarm to deal 5 to an attacker, and you play this and then attack and they can't cast their spell.
Right. You can get them for that and it can cause an annoyance, but for the most part, they can just simply cast the spell on their turn, give up a little bit of equity, but still resolve it. Now, the next level is kind of where the real action starts. It's 2 and a white for level 2, and creatures you control get +1/+1. Now that's some business, right? That type of global effect on your creatures is really powerful. Level 3 is 4 and a white. Whenever you attack, until end of turn, target attacking creature gets +1/+1 for each other attacking creature and gains double strike.
Oh, wow. Yeah, the combination of the level 2 and 3 make Paladin class one of, if not maybe the best white rare. It's best white card even, just because this comes out, it mildly annoys them in terms of keep casting spells on your turn. That's not a huge deal, but it sometimes matters. But then it turns into Glorious Anthem. All your creatures get +1/+1. That's already a good card. You would play white and then spend 2 and a white to give all your creatures +1/+1 and be happy with it in the vast majority of white decks.
Yeah.
But then adding level 3, which just makes one of your creatures a just enormous beast. Paladin class is just unbelievably good. It even makes it so when you because this, pumps for each attacking creature, so you want to attack with all your stuff. All your little dorks also have gotten +1/+1 from level 2, so maybe those even trade instead of just dying. Paladin class just gets an A. It's a great card.
A for Paladin class, really great beatdown card. And then you also always get that level 1 just sort of hanging out there being annoying too. Next is Dancing Sword. This is 1 and a white for an artifact equipment at rare. The equipped creature gets +2/+1, and the equip cost is 1. Now, there's more text and I'm going to read it here, but I have to say just giving me that right there, this card is excellent, right? This is exactly what I want out of an equipment. The most important number as far as casting and equip is definitely equip. It's only 1 mana to equip this, and it does what I want. My creature gets bigger. It's +2/+1. Now, it has additional text. When a equipped creature dies, you may have Dancing Sword become a 2/1 construct artifact creature with flying and ward 1. If you do, it isn't an equipment. So if the creature that it's on dies, you can have this thing become a 2/1 flyer.
And it doesn't change back at that point. Change
back. And
yeah, you're committed. You're committed to just making it a 2/1 flyer with ward 1 too.
Mm-hmm.
Card's great because a 2 mana equipment that goes +2/+1 for equip 1 is something any equipped deck will be like salivating over, and then even just normal decks will be very happy with. That's Trusty Machete with a better equip cost from Zendikar. That card was amazing.
Yeah.
And then the buyout of, sometimes you're just going to have the creature die and you need a flyer is just great flexibility to have, because it turns this card from a situation where it would be dead, which is you don't have any creatures in play, to an actual active threat itself. I would give Dancing Sword an A-. I'd just be really happy having this card in my deck.
Same. I've played it as well, and I never turned it into a 2/1 because I always had other creatures to put it on. But if it was my last creature, I would have turned it into a 2/1, and the card performed as well as an A-. So A- for Dancing Sword. It's amazing. All right, Luis, I saw this one in a pack, and I'm like, what in the world is a flumph?
So it's actually these like jellyfish, like celestial type things that just kind of float around, and they're goodly, and they actually like
they don't hurt, they don't sting you or bite you or whatever.
No, they as it even says in the flavor text, they share knowledge with friendly adventurers.
But they're not sea creatures, that they're floating around in the air.
No, they're not sea creatures. They're like a land jellyfish.
All right. Well, flumph in this case is, and remember, jellyfish is like my favorite creature type. So I'm in. It's 1 and a white for a 0/4 jellyfish at rare. It's got defender and flying. And whenever flumph is dealt damage, you and target opponent each draw a card. I get it now. I get it. They're sharing knowledge. It's like everybody gets something.
Yeah. It's a funny card. It's not a great card.
It's really bad, right?
Well, so I don't think really bad is entirely the whole story, because yes, it is for most decks. But if you're playing a very controlling deck and you play this, you get a 2 mana 0/4 flying defender. Okay, that's a card I would play in some decks. Like if you're a control deck, that's often a card you'd play, right? It stops Windrakes, it stops 3/3 flyers, whatever. Now the both player draws a card thing. So on the surface, it looks like it's about even, right? You both draw a card.
Right.
The downside is they get to use the card first, because presumably they attacked without tapping their mana, and then you block and you both draw, and now they can play something. But the upside is you kind of choose when it's going to happen. So if they attack you with a 2/2, you could choose to take 2 damage if you didn't want both players to draw a card. Now, that means you're not really using your card, so that part isn't great. But I could see control decks that want to hit land drops being okay with both players drawing. If you think your late game is going to be better, having more options to survive until the late game is generally a good thing.
Okay.
Of course, sometimes you play against an aggro deck that's going to kill you when you have 5 cards in your hand still, so each player drawing 2 isn't necessarily good for you. On balance, I think this card is a D, but I could see some control decks being interested. It's a weird card for sure.
It's one of my favorites. Flumph. It's a funny name too. All right, we're going to go D for Flumph. Next is Loyal Warhound. This is 1 and a white for a 3/1 vigilance dog. It's rare. And when it enters the battlefield, if an opponent controls more lands than you search your library for a basic plains card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. So this reminds me of, what is it, Knight of the White Orchid? There's some differences, some key differences here, but that's a very powerful effect, right? The ability to get back ahead of land, particularly for white.
Yeah, I mean, a 2 mana 3/1 vigilance is like slightly below average, but if you tack in, hey, if you're on the draw, you can cast this and then go get a land. That's huge. I mean, that's a huge advantage.
It really is.
2 mana 3/1 that ramps you, because it doesn't even put it into your hand. It puts it into play, catches you up.
Right.
Also, this costing a single white mana makes it so much easier to pull off that play than Knight of the White Orchid, which costs double white, because there you'd have to lead planes. Here you can lead planes whatever and still get the Warhound going. The real question is, if you have a loyal Warhound in your deck, are you choosing to go second?
Yeah, that's the interesting decision point. I mean, I think you don't, because, white seems to be a little more aggressive. Maybe if you're black-white full-on dungeoneering or whatever, maybe. But, I mean, you also just sort of get spotted this for all the times that you just lose the die roll, right? Or you win the first game or whatever.
Yeah, I think I would still choose to play unless I had a lot of cheap removal. And I wasn't aggressive. That's typically the recipe for being on the draw. But overall, Loyal Warhound is great. I would give Loyal Warhound a B+. I think Loyal Warhound's just a great card.
Same. Somebody played against me, and I'm like, wow, there's just a lot of really good things to like about this dog. So B+ for Loyal Warhound. Next is Oswald Fiddlebender. This is 1 and a white for a legendary Gnome Artificer at rare. It's a 2/2. So 2 mana 2/2. With Magical Tinkering, you can pay white, tap it, and sacrifice an artifact. Search your library for an artifact card with mana value equal to 1 plus the sacrifice artifact's mana value. Put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. You can only do this at sorcery speed.
So it's basically Birthing Pod for artifacts.
Right, you can Birthing Pod specifically artifacts.
This is one of those cards that we talked about that a constructed deck built around this might be able to do something. I would say in general, this is not something I'm looking for in draft. I mean, it's a 2 mana 2/2, so the floor isn't abysmally low, and you can sack treasures to get like a 1-drop, which could be cute in the right situations. But there's a couple like artifact themed cards in this set, like the Ingenious Smith is another one that I just don't think really fit in limited. There's not really support for them. So I would give Oswald Fiddlebender a D. If you need to play a 2 mana 2/2 with slight upside, sure, it's fine. But realistically, the upside is extremely slight outside of some very select decks.
Yeah, build around something if you're a dreamer. Next is Guardian of Faith. This is 1 white for a 3/2 Spirit Knight at rare. It's got Flash and Vigilance. And it says, when Guardian of Faith enters the battlefield, any number of other target creatures you control phase out. And again, there's reminder text here that treat them and anything attached to them as though they don't exist until their controller's next turn.
So it's basically 3 mana 3/2 Flash Vigilance that protects your creatures from a removal spell or lets you block and then phase them out.
Right.
And it's pretty nice that it's any number. So like this could lead to like, okay, chump Guardian. So basically it's like a fog for 3 mana 3/2 still. And that's pretty sweet. It's good at protecting your stuff. It doesn't unlock creatures from like, say, a Minimus Containment or anything like that.
Right.
Though I guess you can't even actually target because it's not a creature anymore. But any sort of like a Charmed Sleep effect stays on the creature. This isn't exile and come back. So you do have to be aware of that. But if you can keep mana up for this and like dodge a removal spell, it can be pretty strong. The chump blocking thing's decent. Overall, I would say this card's a B just because it's got a lot of pretty high win scenarios. Plus 3 mana 3/2 Flash is like generally playable anyway.
Yeah, agreed. Also, it has the ability to steal games, right? Like that situation you described where your opponent's like, well, I'm going to attack with, all my creatures or whatever, because you don't have any good blocks and you have to block or else you're going to die. And even if they're at low life total, they may feel comfortable just putting that much pressure on you. Guardian of Faith lets you block and keep your creatures so that on your next turn you can attack with them, right? So like you could actually swing a game back. Kind of interesting. We don't really see effects like this, but I like B for Guardian of Faith as well. Seems solid. Nadar, Selfless Paladin is next. This is 2 and a white for a 3/3 legendary Dragon Knight at rare. It's got Vigilance. And when Nadar enters the battlefield or attacks, venture into the dungeon, which is cool. And then other creatures you control get +1/+1 as long as you've completed a dungeon. Nice. This is solid.
So 3 mana 3/3 Vigilance that has the Primeval Titan or Titan triggers of attacking or ETB is pretty sweet.
Yeah.
And then the upside of +1/+1 as long as you've completed a dungeon is pretty sick too. I mean, this card is fantastic in like the black, white, or blue, white like dungeon theme decks, but it's also great in any deck that can cast it. It's 3 mana 3/3 with like 3 different types of upside.
Right, exactly.
Can't really ask for much more than that. So yes, if I saw this card, I would try to supplement the dungeon theme because I mean, the card's great if you already completed a dungeon before you even play it, right? It just comes into play and gives all your creatures +1/+1. but it's also great at pushing that theme itself. So Nadar gets an A, just like there's no caveats there. But if you can, support the dungeon theme, this is a great way or a great reason to do so.
Right. A nice baseline A with upside. Pretty good. The next is the Book of Exalted Deeds. This is white for a legendary artifact. It's mythic. And it says, at the beginning of your end step, if you gain 3 or more life this turn, create a 3/3 white angel creature token with flying. It also has an activated ability of white, tap it and exile it. Put an enlightened counter on target angel. It gains, you can't lose the game and your opponents can't win the game. And you can only activate that ability as a sorcery. So life gain payoff supreme here, but it is triple white.
You would mainly play this in the life gain deck because the whole make an angel into platinum angel thing, I don't think is very good. First of all, you'd have to find an angel, and that either means gaining 3 life off this or some other angel. I don't know how many angels are in the set overall, but it's not very many. Mm-hmm. And then second, making it so they can't win unless they kill your 3/3 angel. That's just not the biggest challenge in the world. They'll just kill your angel, So right. Mostly I look at this as a pretty hard to cast, expensive, or color wise life gain enabler, because it is really strong if you're getting an angel every turn, or even just get 2 angels over the course of the game. That's already good enough. How many 3/3s do you need? So overall, I would give the book a build around C or so, because the mana cost is so intense. You would have to end up in a spot where you're playing 11 planes or something, or 12 planes. Because one of the dangers of this isn't I'm splashing Crackle with power, and then when I draw my second mountain on turn 10, I win the game. You draw your third planes on turn 7, you might have already used all your life gain stuff.
Right. Yeah, it all has to line up kind of perfectly for you. I did a quick search here, by the way. It looks like there's 1 angel. The common, the 3/3, the 3 white 3/3 that dungeons when you attack.
So yeah, it's mostly you're just playing this for 90% of the card is the if you've gained 3 life, make a 3/3 angel, which is a strong ability. So
yeah, so get your potion of healings going, because you're gonna need them.
I would basically avoid this card unless you are really, really committed to being very strong white life gain themed.
Yeah, agreed. And, if you're looking at the commons that are relevant for that kind of as one-shots, you've got the Hill Giant Herd Gorger. That's the 6 mana 7/6 that when it ETBs, you gain 3. The Inspiring Bard, which is the 3 and a G, 3/3. And one of the options when it ETBs is you can gain 3, and then Potion of Healing. There's other cards that you can combine to make that happen. But if you're looking at just the commons, that's the way to get an angel off it right away. So you're going to want to prioritize those. So what build around grade would you give it?
I think C overall.
A C.
It's a low tier build around just because of the casting cost. If this card cost 2 and a white, I would say it would be a build around B, because it's just a really strong payoff. But
setup cost is very high for this, not only to get it on the battlefield, but to trigger it. Fair enough. Next is our first Planeswalker here. It's Grandmaster of Flowers, 2 white for a 3 loyalty legendary Planeswalker, Bahamut, and this is a mythic. It has static ability. As long as Grandmaster of Flowers has 7 or more loyalty counters on him, he's a 7/7 dragon god creature with flying and indestructible. Wow. Okay. And the abilities are actually both +1s. The first one is target creature without first strike, double strike, or vigilance can't attack or block until your next turn. Wow. And then the other +1 is search your library and or graveyard for a card named Monk of the Open Hand, reveal it, and put it in your hand. If you search your library this way, shuffle. Which one is Monk of the Open Hand again? Is that the 2/2 lifelink?
No, it's the 1 mana 1/1 uncommon that when you play your second spell, it gets a +1/+1 counter. So
right, the uncommon. Right. Okay.
There's 2 things going on here. One is that I would definitely try to speculate on Monks of the Open Hand if there's nothing else in the pack and you're white. That card is playable also in some decks, but you got to hedge for when you open or get past Grandmaster of Flowers.
Yeah, that's insane if you get that going.
And then the second thing is that the Grandmaster of Flowers is a very strong payoff. So how this generally plays, because I've actually gotten a chance to both play with and against it, is you have this and the +1 basically locks down one of their creatures, because there are not that many creatures that have first strike, double strike, or vigilance. Flying is not on that list. You lock down a flyer. So it protects itself fairly well in that sense. Of course, if you have a monk, you often go get the monk and then get it back because it gets it back when it dies and all that. But overall, what you're looking to just protect this until it hits 7. Then once it hits 7, it stops being attackable because it's a 7/7 creature with flying and indestructible. But you can still use the +1 abilities. So you kind of get to have your cake and eat it too. The ultimate there is quite strong.
Yeah, that seems like the game would basically just end if you get to, it's a weird way to put it, like, cause it's not your traditional minus ultimate, I win. But if you get Grandmaster of Flowers up to the requisite loyalty, what was it, 7? I mean, you're just going to win the game very, very quickly, right?
Oh, I mean, a 7/7 flying indestructible that is also locking down a creature every turn, or maybe getting that monk back over and over again. Yeah, that's a pretty ridiculous.
Is there a way to get the loyalty back down again if Grandmaster has indestructible? Does the loyalty still go away if you like burn it?
No. At that point, I don't know exactly every single rule about it, but as far as I know, it does not lose loyalty when it takes damage because it's no longer a planeswalker.
Yeah, that's how I understand it as well. So basically, it is, how you described it. So, I mean, this card seems incredible, right? Like, we look for planeswalkers that protect themselves. This one, if you don't have the Monk of the Open Hands, doesn't give you that middle range of kind of getting a card. But, boy, what a threat, right? It just sits here and kind of neutralizes one of their creatures, or potentially one of their creatures, and it even could scale, assuming that the creature doesn't have the abilities that it can't touch. But I mean, you're going to find something, and then it'll just end the game in a couple of turns if you can actually just keep plussing it. So
yeah, it's got the biggest drawback is it locks down one creature a turn, but it doesn't do anything other than that. Like it doesn't give you a permanent advantage. It's not like you can draw a card or kill something or anything like that. So there are situations where you play this, lock down something, but then they kill a blocker and can attack this down. You're not getting constant value out of it, but it's still a huge bomb. Like if they don't have a really good offense, this will just sit there and grow. And if you do have the monk, it gets even better.
Yeah. What grade would you give it if you do not have a monk in your deck? That's kind of what I want to know.
I would give it an A- without a monk and an A with a monk.
Okay.
It's still just a fantastic card. It's 4 mana. It comes in, ticks up to 4 loyalty. Their best creature can't attack, assuming it doesn't have one of those abilities. And then if they don't kill it in 3 turns, you get a 7/7 Bahamut that just probably ends the game.
Okay. Very nice. So A to A- depending on your monk situation there for Grandmaster of Flowers. Next is Icing Death, Frost Tyrant. Oh, okay. So they should go deep here, right? This is like a big nasty frost dragon or whatever. 2 white for a legendary dragon at Mythic rare. It has flying and vigilance, and it's a 4/3. So that's pretty good. And then it says, when Icing Death Frost Tyrant dies, create Icing Death Frost Tongue, a legendary white equipment artifact token with equipped creature gets +2/+0. And I guess whenever equipped creature attacks, tap target creature defending player controls and equip 2. Well, that wasn't very elegant.
Not the most, but basically it's a 4 mana 4/3 flying vigilance that dies into a very strong equipment.
Yeah.
Because that equipment sits there.
That's awesome.
And just farms them. They just have to, you tap down their biggest creature and you're attacking with +2/+0. And that makes it so, they're going to have to throw something in the way. They'll lose that race fairly badly. And yeah, overall it's pretty good. Also, the story is solid here, by the way. That sword is apparently what Drizzt, who's also one of the characters here, probably one of the top 3 or so most famous D&D characters, probably.
Okay.
He wields that sword that he got after defeating that dragon. So
okay, and so you have to. So yeah, it's kind of so the opponent kills your dragon, and the dragon kind of spits out this sword, and then you can pick that up and start smashing them with it. I mean, this looks like an A, but
it's clearly an A. I mean, It's not like they can avoid dealing with a 4/3 flying vigilance either.
Right, exactly. That's going to take a card to get rid of, and then you get this sweet equipment. Nice. A for Icing Death. That seems really great. Last white one is Teleportation Circle, and this is 3 and a white for an enchantment at rare. At the beginning of your end step, exile up to 1 target artifact and or creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. Lets you blink a thing on end step.
Yeah, I think this card's awesome. It's clearly a build around card, but if you have anything that's making progress, this card is huge. I mean, if you have the priest, this card can the 2/1. This card can can let you get a cardinal life every turn. If you've got like the Scion of Stygia, the tapper, this card can like maybe tap something down and trigger a die roll every turn, and so on and so forth. So basically, I think that Teleportation Circle takes some work, but on balance, the payoff is so high and the ways to enable it are frequent enough that I would really heavily prioritize this. I would give it a builder on A. It's just an awesome card. Plus, they can't kill it. It's an enchantment. I mean, there are a couple ways to kill enchantments, but they're not that many. And when you have this going, like most decks won't be able to kill this, so they have to kill every single ETB creature you have, which, think about that. That's also a good setup. You played a creature with an ETB ability and they had to kill it. Like that's intrinsically card advantage, assuming the ETB is anything of value. So I'm really in for Teleportation Circle. I have seen this do some really gross things.
Now, the one issue that comes to mind, though, is that it does seem that some of the things that would have normally been ETB triggers have been replaced by when you do a thing, roll a die, like when you attack, or you can pay you can pay mana to roll a die. Do you feel like this set has fewer ETB triggers than is needed for this, or is it fine?
Our ETB roll a die. So
yeah, that's true. That's true.
I think it is well supported in this set. That's why I think it's worth getting a build around A. Like, you can't put it in your deck with no combos, but they're just so easy to find combos. I would basically first pick this over all the commons and uncommons and just try to build around it. It's such a high payoff. Yeah,
because then you can just gear yourself towards it. Okay, so build around A for Teleportation Circle. Commit to the cause and get rewarded. Next is blue. We'll move on to blue. And our first card is called the Blackstaff of Waterdeep. It is blue for a legendary artifact at rare. It says you may choose not to untap the Blackstaff at Waterdeep during your untap step. And it has animate walking statue. You can pay 1 and a blue, tap it. And another target non-token artifact you control becomes a 4/4 artifact creature for as long as the Blackstaff of Waterdeep remains tapped, and you can only do this at sorcery speed.
Another faithful recreation of what the Blackstaff does. It has a ton of powers in the game because it's like a legend. It is literally a legendary artifact, but one of them is it animates these statues all around Waterdeep. So good call there. This card is, again, a build-around card, but a pretty rewarding one. If you have, ways to make treasure, is going to be the most common thing.
Can you do treasure?
Yeah, you. Oh, non-token.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, never mind. I'm kind of off it. For a second, I thought this was just a good way to get value off making treasure.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too, especially because it's blue for the blue-red deck, and instead it's you have to actually cast artifacts? Like, wow.
I'm going to give it a build-around D then. If you've got a bunch of artifacts that you can animate, this is good, but it's just you're now. The whole joke I thought was like you could make a treasure that just costs you less than a card and then turn them into 4/4s. That the fact that it's non-token means you're actually just turning real cards into 4/4s, and that's just not that exciting.
That's not exciting. And then also, it's not like you touch it with the staff and now it's a 4/4 forever. It has to stay on it, right?
Yeah.
And then that 4/4 gets used up, and then maybe you could upgrade something else. But yeah, this seems really bad.
Yeah. Give it a build around D then, I guess.
Build around D for Blackstaff of Waterdeep. Next is Yuan T. Malison. Is that close? Okay. 1 and a blue for a 2/1 Snake Rogue at rare. Yuan T. Malison can't be blocked as long as it's attacking alone. And whenever it deals combat damage to a player, this better be good, venture into the dungeon. Okay, that's pretty good.
Yeah, no, it's a strong card. I mean, a 2-mana 2/1 that can't be blocked as long as it's attacking alone, that's already a pretty good card.
That's pretty good.
You play it on turn 2, it's unblockable for your next couple of turns because you don't even have other attackers. And then late in the game, it's just I'll attack you for 2 every turn, maybe put an equipment on it. But then when it hits, it also has a good ability. Yuan T. Malison looks great to me. I would give it an A-.
Yeah, I like B+, A-. I'm going to go B+ for it. This reminds me of a really strong uncommon rather than a super sick rare. But this card's just great. There's just no downside. It can even block if you need to.
Yeah.
Next is Dragon Turtle. I played this one. It's 1 blue for a 3/5 Dragon Turtle. It's rare. It has flash and it has drag below. When Dragon Turtle enters the battlefield, tap it, and up to one target creature an opponent controls. They don't untap during their controller's next untap steps. So you're getting a 3-mana 3/5 that drags something down. It does have flash, but of course, limited players like us, we see flash on a 3/5 and I'm like, I am ambushing something with this. And that's not quite how it works.
So this doesn't ambush, though it can in a very specific scenario where you cast it, you target their creature, and then their creature's removed. And then the ability will fizzle, but you can't choose nothing because it says up to one. If you choose nothing, this is just going to get locked down. So it's a weird scenario. It's not going to come up very often. But generally what this does, it's a 3-mana 3/5 that drags one of their things down for a turn, and then you get a 3-mana 3/5 after that. Like, it just kind of chills there. Yeah. But that's solid. It's a pretty big creature. I mean, the deal is good there.
Yeah. And I mean, imagine just a normal use case where, you play your third land, your opponent plays their third land, they go attack you with my 2, or, go to combat, and you just go, before combat, Dragon Turtle, tap down your 2/2, right? It's not, some devastating play, but it's like, I have a 3/5, it will untap soon. And you can also get like little extra value too, like your opponent equips something and you can flash this in to tap down their thing so they don't get the attack step. Little stuff like that adds up, but mainly it's just kind of a stats beast, right? I mean, it's a 3-mana freaking 3/5.
Yeah. I don't know I think the ability is probably more, this card would be stronger if it didn't have the ability than if it did, because it could ambush things. But
yes, yeah, it'd be like a removal spell.
Still quite a strong card. I would give Dragon Turtle probably a B, just a good card. Happy to have it in my deck.
Dragging them down. Next is Grazilax Ithalid Scholar. Wow, this looks like a really kind person. It's 1 blue for a 3/2 legendary creature horror, and it's rare. Whenever a creature you control becomes blocked, you may return it to its owner's hand. That's just a static ability. Then the other one is whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, draw a card. Wow.
Pretty cool set of abilities where, like, you've got 2 2/2s and they have a 3/3. You just send them both in, bounce the one they block, and then the one that gets through draws you a card. You only draw 1 card per turn, whether you hit them with a 1 creature or 10. Okay. So you're not getting like 5 cards off this, but pretty consistently can give you a card. Also, its ability works on itself, where if it hits, you draw, or if it's blocked, you can bounce it if you choose to. Pretty nice with ETB effects as well. You attack with like the 2/1 flash tapper, and they either block and you get it back, or you draw a card. Grazilax looks like probably an A- to me. Like, imagine you play a 2-drop and then you play this on 3 and you get a hit in. Like, that's just a huge
It's already
swing.
Amazing. And putting your opponent in a really tough spot. Yeah.
Yeah. And it just makes attacking so much less risky overall. So pretty sweet card. Definitely have to have a high creature count. But if you meet that bar, I think it's going to be pretty strong.
And there's such really nasty combos too. Like the 2/1 that draws you a card. It's just like, attack with this, you figure it out, you're getting a card one way or the other. Yeah, I like A- for Grazilax Ithalid Scholar. That's sweet.
Yeah, I mean, for A- on Grazilax, I think it's good.
Tasha's Hideous Laughter. Okay, what is, like, I haven't read it yet, but what is Tasha's Hideous Laughter referring to?
So it's a iconic spell that if they
it's
fail
actually the name of a spell.
Oh, literally the name of the spell.
Okay.
Where if they fail, right, to resist it, they are basically immobilized as they just are rolling on the ground in like this unearthly laughter.
Oh, really? All right. Well, let's see how they did it. It's 1 blue for a sorcery at rare. Each opponent exiles cards from the top of their library until that player has exiled cards with total mana value 20 or more.
Yeah, I don't really get the story.
Okay.
Like, I guess attacking someone's deck is like attacking their sanity. It maybe is the whole thing. But overall, I'm not a huge fan of the story. Also, I think the card's just wildly unplayable. Like, there will be times when this card wins the game, right? Mm-hmm. You cast it late enough in the game, their curve is low enough, and you just get their whole deck. But there's just not really any mill support. So if you cast this and you get them down to 5 cards, a lot of the times you'll just still lose the game, because it's not like you can get their last couple cards. You mill them down to 7. And it's like, okay, well, was this game lasting 7 more turns? If the answer is no, then this didn't do anything. Yeah,
it's a lot of mill that's happening, right? It's just you don't want it to be your only mill card. But I mean, I haven't, we need to Carson it up here to get the numbers, but if it's like, what's the average cost of a card in your deck? It's like 2 or something, because like, I think the average cost of a spell in your deck is probably like 3, but almost half your deck is 0. So it's probably like 1.5, like between 1.5 and 2, somewhere in that range.
Yeah. So it mills like 15 to 20 cards or whatever. That's just not enough.
It's like,
but that's just not enough to win most games.
No, it's enough to finish games if you have a deck that can go super long. But having this just be your only mill card, just it usually, if this was just something that did anything else relevant, you'd have, just as high or even a higher percentage, because, just as a refresher, you can, if you put this kind of card in a control deck that's really controlling, it can be your finisher. These type of cards can end the game, and they're hard to interact with. But the times when you find yourself behind against like an assertive aggressive deck, and you need to really do stuff like cast a creature to block or remove a thing or whatever, and you have Tasha's Hideous Laughter in your hand, you're really sad because it just doesn't affect the board in any meaningful way. So it's usually not hard to find ways to win a game after you've taken control of it either. I'm assuming this is like a D. I don't know. Maybe it's a sideboard card that you bring in control mirrors.
I would like to see a little more how the games play out. I could see this being like as high as a B, though. I think I would. My inclination is to give it a D. I don't think it quite gets there, but I could definitely see if the games are routinely long enough, maybe this card ends up being a good finisher. There's some control decks that are going to have trouble beating this card.
Definitely.
But the funny thing is control decks also tend to play more expensive cards, which obviously makes this card a bit worse too. So
yeah, that's true.
Who knows?
Yeah, really interesting to see how it plays out on how many cards you end up getting. We'll have to ask Frank about that one. Next is Demilich. So it's here. You read this one. That's too much text for me, and I need.
It's a blue. So its casting cost is 4 blue mana symbols, and it's a 4/3 skeleton wizard at Mythic Rare. But it costs 1 blue less to cast for each instant and sorcery spell you've cast this turn. So every spell you cast makes it a little cheaper, and it takes the colored mana symbols off. Whenever it attacks, exile up to 1 target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard, copy it, and you may cast the copy. So you have to pay the mana.
Wow.
But whenever it attacks, it casts a spell from your graveyard. And then you can also cast this from your graveyard by exiling 4 instant or sorcery cards and pay its mana cost.
Wow. Okay. As a limited player, I'm like, yeah, I don't think I can actually cast this at any point. Like, it costs quad blue, and if I somehow can cast other spells, I can get that reduced, but that's not actually reducing the amount of mana that I need to spend. So that's not great. And then also, does my deck have the requisite number of instants and sorceries in it to support this? I assume probably not on average, but holy smokes did they push this thing. The card's incredible.
I actually think this card's going to be pretty good. So the part of it is you can use cheap cards of your other color as ways to color fix. So let's say you cast a spell that costs 1 black mana. Now this costs 1 blue less, so you only need to spend 3 blue on it. So let's say you end up with a board that has like, let's say you have 2 islands and 4 swamps out. I can imagine scenarios where you can cast 2 black spells, then tap the 2 islands and cast this.
Okay.
It's also kind of a must kill when it's in play, because if it attacks, you get to cast a spell into your graveyard, and when it's in your graveyard, you can sometimes bring it back maybe once per game in a deck that has a lot of spells. Like, imagine this: you have a couple Grim Bounties in your deck, right? That make you a treasure. Yeah. And you put in like a Check for Traps, like a 2 mana spell, and you kind of prioritize cheaper spells overall and total spells, where you end up with like 12 spells in your deck, 14 spells in your deck. Not unreasonable to end up there. So This is a card that takes some building around. It's a build around card. I think it's a build around A. I think that if you can get to the spell density, this card will work wonders for you. Yeah,
you brought up a really important point that I hadn't considered there. So, okay, you need to have, some critical mass of spells. Treasures, though. That really, really helps. So that I had forgotten or hadn't really factored into the equation. So, okay, yeah, build around A for Demilich. That's absurd.
I mean, imagine a red-blue deck. You cast Unexpected Windfall, the 4 mana, discard a card, make 2 treasures, and then have 1 island left over. Just cast this card.
You can just cast it. Wow. Yeah, and then you're getting it back, and you're not paying, and you're getting the cards and the treasure and all that stuff. This card's sick. Wow. And I'm just, of course, when I look at it, I'm thinking of like, blue, red, and historic or what, some Steam Vents deck just completely abusing the hell out of this. But at any rate.
Yeah, of course. All
right. Build around A. That card's amazing. What is this? Mirth?
I've been calling it Imrith, but I don't know if that's correct.
Imrith? Yeah, that's good. I like that. Imrith Desert Doom. So this is 3 blue for a 5/5 legendary creature dragon at Mythic Rare. It's got flying. So already 100% in. And then Imrith Desert Doom has Ward 4 as long as it's untapped. Okay, see, this is where I like this. This is where we talked before about how Ward is better than Hexproof. Look, this thing's really, really difficult to kill if it's untapped, but there are, possibilities for it at least. It also has more. Whenever Imrith deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Then if you have fewer than 3 cards in hand, draw cards equal to the difference. What? God. I mean, look, I know they're going to take the gloves off when they do a Dungeons and Dragons themed set and there's a legendary mythic dragon, but that's sick.
Oh yeah. Wow. Imrith is amazing. So a real way to get more value out of this card, not that you need much more, is you cast it. They, assuming you cast it early where they just can't pay for the ward cost. If they leave their mana up, just don't attack them. Just play something else.
So brutal if they just have to sit there and hold their cards.
Because you don't want to run into any stupid removal spell because you've tapped your dragon. But if they tap out, gloves are off, like you said. And of course, a 5-mana 5/5 that draws a card, maybe 2, maybe 3 if you have no cards in hand when you attack and you hit them. Plus, it's got a pretty good protection ability. Yeah, this is just an A+. This is exactly what you think about when you think about Bomb Mythic Rare.
It's literally like the perfect just bomb mythic. A+ for Imrith. Mind Flayer is next. This is 3 blue for a 3/3 horror. It is rare. It has Dominate Monster. When Mind Flayer enters the battlefield, gain control of target creature for as long as you control Mind Flayer. They printed this?
Oh yeah.
That card's insane.
Oh, it's incredible. I had the pleasure of playing with it, and it lives up to its expectations. It's 5-mana 3/3 that you're ahead on board almost every time after casting this because you got a 3/3 and their best creature switched to your side. Of course, if they kill this, they get to undo it, so there is an escape hatch, there. But for the most part, this is a kill me or lose situation, and that's pretty good on a 5-mana spell, especially if you have ways to bring it back from the graveyard or protect it. This is one of the few cards that would make me play you see a guard single blue mana to give hexproof because. Oh boy, that's a combo. If you can play this with hexproof off, they do have to kill this to win the game on almost any situation.
And they have a short window to do it. Yeah, maybe it's just because it's a somewhat known or simple effect, but the fact that this is just a regular rare is kind of scary to me. I mean, yeah, this has downside over cards like Mind Control, which was, 3 blue, gain control of target creature, but it was an enchantment, right? And that this can die. This dies to a lot of removal and you can get your card back. But Mind Control doesn't factor in for, this is also a 3/3 that helps you win the game faster as well. You can also cast this into an empty board. Not that I really ever will, I don't think, but you
won't do that.
Right. Even I'm just saying that this actually has some upsides over Mind Control that aren't there. If your opponent has a 1/1 and you have a 3/3 to steal. Yeah. This thing's incredible. I mean, this is an A+. This is the A+est that I think I can give.
Yeah. I mean, I do think I would take Imrith over Mind Flayer if they were both in the pack, but they're also both A+s. So
would you?
Yeah. They're both must kills, and one of them has Ward 4.
That's true. It's also very difficult to lose the game if you cast Imrith just because it's such a good blocker.
Yeah.
Okay. At any rate, A+ for Mind Flayer. That is a front runner for best card in the set for me, right next to the other front runner for best card in the set. Was it Mordekainen? Is that what you said?
Mordenkainen, who's again also one of the top D&D characters in terms of fame. It's funny because all these started as literal D&D characters played by people who made the game, but
oh really?
That's my understanding. I don't know.
And they made it way into the books.
Well, like Mordenkainen was literally Gary Gygax or Gygax, I don't know, the guy who invented D&D, the creator. Like it was his wizard. So I mean, when you create things, you get to do stuff like that. It's pretty sweet.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. What does it do? What does he do?
Let's see if he lives up to his legendary status. He's a planeswalker. So legendary planeswalker Mordenkainen, 4 blue, 5 loyalty. +2, draw 2 cards, and then put a card from your hand on the bottom of your library. So it's kind of like a mini brainstorm, but it goes to the bottom, which is way better than the top. So comparable to just at this point it's comparable to just +2, draw 2 cards. Like obviously it's not quite as good, but draw 2 cards, then put your worst card on the bottom. Very, very close to draw 2 cards. Its -2 is create a blue dog illusion, it's a creature token with this creature's power and toughness are each equal to twice the number of cards in your hand.
What?
So if you have 2 cards in your hand, it's a 4. And then it's -10
and
abilities.
It scales, right? So like you draw your card for the turn as 6/6.
Yes. So and then you use the +2 ability and it becomes an 8/8. It's the -10 on Mordenkainen is exchange your hand and library and then shuffle, and then now you have an emblem with no max hand size. So basically
you might never actually do that, right?
Well, if you had like 6 cards in your hand, you could use the ability and then draw like 15 or 20 cards. It's probably how many you have left. I think it's probably worse than continuing to use the -2 ability if you have that much loyalty, but because the dogs aren't legendary. So like on an empty board, you could go Mordenkainen, make a dog, next turn make a dog, and then start plussing it.
That's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, it's also like if they have let's say they have a 3/3 flyer, right? That's the nightmare scenario for most planeswalkers. Mordenkainen +2. And you go up to 7 loyalty and you draw 2 cards. They hit it down to 4 loyalty. And then your next turn, if you don't have an answer, you can +2 again and go back up to 6 loyalty. But you've drawn 4 cards off Mordenkainen and +1 from your draw stuff. Hopefully you can answer a 3/3 flyer. And of course, if they're all on ground creatures, the -2 of making a bunch of like 4/4, 6/6, 8/8 dogs. Yeah, I mean, we've got another A+ on our hands.
I can't remember a 3-card lineup like this, Luis. Like.
Oh yeah,
Imrith, Mind Flayer, Mordenkainen. Like,
I mean, if you look at the top 10 cards in the set, I'd be shocked if these weren't on them.
Totally.
So, Blue got the lion's share here. Wow. Of good rares. So A+ for Mordenkainen.
Yeah, and I didn't even mention because it's more build around or whatever, but the Demolish too. So yeah. All right, let's hope that this next card's just kind of a junker. Like I need a little palette cleanser. True Polymorph, it's called. It's 4 blue for an instant. It's rare. It says target artifact or creature becomes a copy of another target artifact or creature.
So
that's interesting.
It can target on both sides for both halves. So there's basically 2 main ways you can use this. You could make your worst creature into the best creature artifact on the board, or you can make a treasure or something, or you can make their best artifact or creature into the worst thing on the board.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, I think at 6 mana, this card sucks.
Yeah, I like that it's instant.
It is flexible. It is instant. It's just so expensive. At 4 mana, I'd be really, really impressed with the card. I think at 6 mana, it's just when you're playing a 6 mana spell, I think you can generally do better than upgrading your worst thing or downgrading their best thing.
Right.
It's like when you downgrade their best thing, at 6 mana, you can just kill their creature. And that's not even a good card
for a common, right? And this you could probably engineer a situation where that happens as well, but there's setup costs involved, and it's not easy. Yeah, I this is interesting because I wonder, let's say that we could make it blue or whatever, but is the -11 just better than this on average? I wonder. I don't know if it is, but it might just be.
I think True Polymorph is an F. I just don't think it's a playable card.
I'm going to go D. I want to at least try it, but boy, yeah, okay, I got my palette cleanser, didn't I? Last blue card is called Wizard Spellbook. This is interesting, Luis. If you're a designer in R&D and you're doing the D&D set and they go, okay, Luis, we need you to make a card. It's called Wizard's Spellbook. Don't mess it up, right? Like there's a lot of pressure. So let's see what they came up with this. It's 5 blue for an artifact at rare, and it has tap. exile target instant or sorcery card from a graveyard, roll a d20, activate only as a sorcery. Okay, so that's not bad. No mana involved with that. You just have to have something in your yard. And then if you roll a 1 through 9, you copy that card and you can cast the copy. All right, that's your baseline. 10 through 19, you copy the card and you can cast a copy by paying 1 rather than paying its mana cost. Okay, I see. So you can cast the copy. You have to pay for it. Here you get it drastically reduced. If you get the critical hit of 20, you copy each card exiled with Wizard Spellbook. You may cast any number of the copies without paying their mana costs. So it counts the one that you just did and any prior ones as well, and you can just cast them all?
Yeah, so basically you play this, you tap, you exile a spell, and what's going to happen a lot of the time is you're going to exile the spell, and if you don't roll a 10 through a 19, you just won't play the spell because you don't have the mana for it. But if you do roll a 10 through a 19, you can just pay 1. And then when you spike a 20, you get to cast all the spells.
Okay.
I think this card's a pretty good build around. Takes a good spell density, but you basically take a turn off to play this, and then from then on, you get to play all your spells twice, and then you do have basically a 5% chance to win the game every time you roll. Mm-hmm. Like when you roll a 20 with 3 spells under it, you usually are going to win that.
Right. And you want to activate it all the time so that you can so that you can start building up the spell book.
And because half the time you're going to play a spell for 1 mana, which is a very good deal.
Right. So this is clunky though. Like this is legitimately clunky. It's 7 mana. You mentioned it's unlikely to do anything the turn it comes down, to affect the board in any way. And you need relevant spells in the graveyard, to do this, which, by this point in the game, you'll have something.
Yeah, I would basically like Demilich. I see this as a builder on A where I believe in like a blue-black or blue-red spells deck. This is going to be a fantastic card. If you can, it's expensive, but if you can cast this on 7 and not die, you're going to take over the game with your Grim Bounties or your, Magic Missiles or Dragon's Fires pretty quickly.
It's true.
Like, it's just so, demoralizing. They're like, all right, I'll play a removal spell. And you're like, wow, I guess they're going to play that removal spell twice this game. Maybe 3 times if they roll a 20. Plus, maybe you combine this with some of the cards that give you extra die rolls just to chase that 20.
Sure. Yeah, because that is a win. Yeah, I would go build around B for Wizard Spellbook. I'm still not impressed by the expensive mana cost, the setup cost with the graveyard stuff, and the fact that you kind of have to take a pretty important turn off to do it.
Oh, actually, so an advantage of watching LR with live chat, you can target spells in their graveyard.
What? Oh, yeah, graveyard. Oh,
so that is a
all right. I'm with you now because if my opponent's going to do part of the work for the setup, that actually changes it for me.
Well, I already like the card. Now I like it even more because now you're going to get a bonus like 2 spells, maybe 3 a game just for free off their graveyard. So
yeah, totally.
Really great call, Pavel. That's some good stuff.
All right. Well, I'm with you then. Yeah, I like build around A for Wizard Spellbook, but it's really narrow. Like, don't just throw this in random blue deck. Like, you actually have to work towards this one. That's a sweet card, though. That is really cool. I want to open that one now. Okay, that's it for blue. We're already kind of predisposed to like blue on this show, but my God, like, they really brought the heat. So let's see if black can keep up. Our first black rare is Forsworn Paladin. It is black. Oh, I've had this. I actually had 2 of these in a deck. Black for a 1/1 menace. It's a human knight at rare. And it has 2 activated abilities. One of them is 1 in a black, tap it, pay a life, and make a treasure token, which is awesome. And the other one is 2 in a black, target creature gets +2/+0 until end of turn. And if mana from a treasure was spent to activate the ability, that creature also gains Death Touch until end of turn. And also, by the way, you can target itself or other things, and you can target multiple things, and you can do it more than 1 time per turn.
Yeah, doesn't take tapping. I actually almost Charmed Sleep one of these, and then I read it again just to make sure. I'm like, yeah, that wouldn't be a great play to make.
No, you could make it so they couldn't attack with it, and they couldn't make treasure, but they could just sit there and fire off. This card's insane. Yeah, it's insane.
It's kind of got the whole package where early game it's a 1/1 menace that can plink in or accelerate you. Turn 1 this, turn 2 make a token, turn 3 play a 4-drop. In the death, the +2/+0, and sometimes Death Touch ability is a great threat of activation there, and it pairs really nicely with the menace. Let's say they have a 2/2 and a 1/1, you can just attack with this, and if they double block, you just trade for both their creatures. I would give Force Worn Paladin an A-. I think this card is going to do a lot of work in every game it shows up.
Like I said, I got lucky and had 2 of them in a deck, and it is 100% an A-. It is amazing. Take it, play it. It's fantastic. Next is Sphere of Annihilation. This is X and black for an artifact. It's rare. It enters the battlefield with X void counters on it. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile Sphere of Annihilation. All creatures and planeswalkers with mana value less than or equal to the number of void counters on it, and all creatures and planeswalkers in graveyards with mana value less than or equal to the number of void counters on it.
So
slow sweeper.
It's a slow sweeper. It's got 1 turn delay. I think that makes this card mediocre.
It does.
Because the problem is you want people to overextend into your sweepers to play too many things. But if you have to then spend another turn before it blows up the world, they're just going to get to whack you for another 5, 6, 7 points of damage, which means you have to pull the trigger earlier to not have, to take that much damage, which kind of lessens the effectiveness of the sweeper to begin with. So I could see board situations where this card's good. You could also play it X = 2 and you have like a 3-drop creature in play, and they've got a bunch of 2-drop creatures in play or equipment or what have you. But overall, I'm not convinced. This is one I could see moving up or down based on kind of how things play out. But my initial rating on this is going to be a D. I just don't think it's what you want.
That's where I'm at too. I had an opponent play it against me, and there's some very awkward things that happen when you need to have your sweeper the turn that you need it. Not only in the scenarios where you just die because it doesn't do anything the turn that you play it, but also sometimes you need to get it on the battlefield to take care of what they already have. So you go, okay, X = 4 to kill your 2, 3, and 4 drop. And they're like, cool, cast a 5-drop, go. Like, attack you with everything, go. And you're like, okay, pop this. It blows up everything small. It leaves exactly the thing that's your biggest threat now behind, right? So, yeah, I think a D for Sphere of Annihilation is appropriate. And I don't anticipate it going up very much. Vorpal Sword is next. It's black. For an artifact equipment, it is rare. It says equipped creature gets +2/+0 and has Death Touch. And it has an activated ability of 5 black, black, black. Until end of turn, Vorpal Sword gains whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, that player loses the game. So there's a big winner. Now, here's the interesting part. The equip cost is double black.
So it's a kind of cheap Death Touch equipment for a heavy black deck. And then once you get up to 8 mana, any creature wearing the Vorpal Sword has to be blocked.
Yep.
A very good representation. Vorpal Swords they're magic swords that if you roll a 20, it cuts off the head of whatever you're fighting.
Oh, wow. So it gives you that shot that even if the thing's like way better than you or whatever?
Yeah, as long as it's a humanoid and like has a head.
I see. Wow, that's kind of cool. This card looks great. I mean, obviously the double black equip cost could be a little bit of an issue, but I like +2/+0 and Death Touch. It works well on offense because of the +2/+0 and works well on defense because of Death Touch. So that's great. And then, yeah, I mean, not every game do you get to 8 mana, but it happens. Treasures happen. Things happen where you now have maybe the greatest threat of activation you could ever come up with, where it's literally you must block this or the game will end. So yeah, I mean, I like, B+, A- for Vorpal Sword. Just seems great.
Yeah, I'll go B+. I think that I think it's got some good stuff going on, but there's of course some games where you just run into a removal spell or two and end up feeling like it's a bit clunky.
Yep. White is next. It is 1 and a black for a 3/2 zombie soldier at rare. White enters the battlefield tapped, and it has life drain, which is not the same thing as drain life. Life drain. Whenever a creature dealt damage by white this turn dies, you get a 2/2 black zombie creature token, and you exile that card.
The zombie's tapped for whatever that's worth. But
a tapped one. Thank you. I
mean, a 2-mana 3/2 that they don't want to trade for because you get an advantage sounds great to me. I mean, there's really no drawback to this card, and it's
the ETB tap's the only downside of the white.
I will give white a B+. It's just a really solid 2-drop. It's going to fall off a little later in the game. Some games your opponent's going to play this on turn 2, and you're going to be like, well, I just can't block that thing ever, so or attack into it, so that's pretty annoying. Right,
or if you block it, it's just okay. You got value on me. So yeah, B+, B for white. Next is Esoteric.
So This is going to be incorrect, but I'm willing to accept that. I always call this guy Acerak because I don't like the extra ER in the word. I think Acerak's a better name, so I just call this Acerak. And right. I'm not interested in changing that. I ran a campaign where he was the main arch villain.
Oh, so okay. All right.
I just say his name a lot, and I was just off. It was actually the Tomb of Annihilation is an actual D&D campaign. So.
Gotcha. All right. So Acerak, the Arch Lich, we're making an executive decision there. So this is 2 and a black for a 5/5 legendary zombie wizard at Mythic. So, okay, sure. Give me a 3-mana 5/5. What's the downside? When it enters the battlefield, if you haven't completed the Tomb of Annihilation, return it to its owner's hand and venture into the dungeon. Okay, so you can pay 3 mana to just venture. All right. And then whenever it attacks, for each opponent, you create a 2/2 black zombie creature token unless that player sacrifices a creature. Wow. That's kind of sweet.
3 mana venture up until the point you've completed the tomb, in which case it's a 3 mana 5/5 that makes a 2/2 when you attack, because they're probably not sacking a creature to stop you from making a 2/2 for the most part. But I think overall, this is one of the better reasons to go into the Tomb of Annihilation. But what's funny is sometimes you're actually not going to want to complete it because you just want the ability 3 mana venture, because you can do this multiple times per turn.
It just keeps bouncing and you just keep doing it. Tomb's the middle one, or the right one, right? The painful one.
Yep. Okay. Yep. And that's good. It's a good flavor for Tomb of Annihilation.
Right.
So it's funny. This actually is an infinite combo with Alurin in Legacy, where you can play a creature that costs 3 or less.
You can just keep venturing over and over and over and over.
Yeah, you just don't go into the tomb. You just go into the other ones.
Oh, that's funny. and there's some like drain you for 1 or whatever, and you can just win
Dark
the game.
Pool in the Lost Mine of Philander. So
sweet.
I would give Acerak probably. I would give Acerak an A-. I think Acerak is pretty strong. Like you're going to want other venture cards to go with this because it's playing to that theme, but it doesn't do much better than that, because you're like, all right, I'm just going to show you Acerak, and now you know that in a couple turns I'm going to get a 5/5, and until then I can just pay 3 mana to venture whenever I want.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm with you. Cool card. Really interesting. I mean, because I don't think you want to pay 3 mana to venture that often, right? Like that's not really doing enough over the long term, but boy, the payoff here is nice, and it's a nice fallback plan too. Okay, what about the Book of Vile Darkness?
This is black for a legendary artifact at Mythic Rare. At the beginning of your end step, if you lost 2 or more life this turn, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token, and you can tap and exile the Book of Vile Darkness and artifacts you control named Eye of Vecna and Hand of Vecna to make Vecna legendary 8/8 black zombie god creature token with indestructible that has all the triggered abilities of the exiled cards. So as cool as this is, and I mean, literally what the D&D campaign I'm running right now is, their goal is to destroy the Book of Vile Darkness. It is a legendary evil artifact. This card's a straight up 0, straight up F in limited. It's a mythic rare that does nothing by itself, because losing 2 life on your turn is just not going to happen very often. And if you combine it with a couple other rares, then you can make Vecna. So that's just never going to happen. So
forget it.
As cool as Book of Vile Darkness is, it just gets a flat out F.
Yeah, it's an F. And you mentioned the critical rules part, is that it's the beginning of your end step. If you got hit, and you got to make zombies, great. Like that would be a cool card, but that's not how this works. Next is Ebondeath Dracolich. Man, they went deep with some of these names. 2 black for a 5/2 legendary creature zombie dragon at Mythic. It's got flash and flying. So 4 mana, 5/2 flash flying. It enters a battlefield tapped though, and it says you can cast it from your graveyard if a creature not named Ebondeath Dracolich died this turn. Wow.
Yeah, Ebondeath gets an A+.
That's insane.
A 4 mana 5/2 flyer, so it's a must kill. And then if it's dead, any creature dying triggers this in as flash, so their turn, your turn, whatever. So they get put in the spot where they just can't ever let something die. And if you at some point build up to like having a cheap removal spell plus this, or at some point combat's got to happen. What are they never going to attack or block? So
right.
I mean, they have to kill a 5/2 flyer. It dies easy and comes back easily. So I would give Ebondeath an A+. This is just a ridiculous rare.
Yeah, that's absurd. Gelatinous Cube is next. This is 2 black for a 4/3 ooze at rare. It has Engulf. When Gelatinous Cube enters the battlefield, exile target non-ooze creature an opponent controls until Gelatinous Cube leaves the battlefield. It also has Dissolve. You can pay black and X to put target creature card with mana value X exiled with Gelatinous Cube into its owner's graveyard. Okay, so 4 mana 4/3, fine. When it ETBs, you get to exile something until it leaves the battlefield. Great. I'm in for that. That's the card I want. I don't really understand the Dissolve part quite as much. Does it just mean that they can't get it back if you do that?
Yeah, you trap something in the cube, and then you spend enough mana to dissolve it, and then there's just no downside.
So it's like
gone
been
forever.
kind of digested or something?
Yeah.
And that's not sorcery speed, that part, right? So if your Gelatinous Cube were to die and you had the mana, then you could say, okay, fine,
Yep. I mean,
that's great. Wow.
Totally excellent.
Yeah.
4 mana 4/3, like, Banisher Priest or Fiend Hunter would already be great. I mean, and then this just gives you a way out of it too, just to make sure that there can be no drawback if you ever have the mana around. So I would give Gelatinous Cube an A-. Really strong card.
Definitely. Yeah, I would just give it an A. I mean, it's such a high 2-for-1 potential. Also, whenever you and I can finally get together after the pandemic, Luis, we got a game plan. Engulf and Dissolve, baby.
Oh, yeah.
Next is Lolth Spider Queen. 3 black for a 4 mana legendary planeswalker Lolth at Mythic. Static ability, whenever a creature you control dies, put a loyalty counter on Lolth Spider Queen. Am I right? 0. So your first loyalty ability costs 0. You draw a card and lose a life. Wow. All right. -3, which would lead Lolth at just 1 loyalty, says create 2/1 black spider creature tokens with menace and reach. Whoa. And the ultimate, which you need to have your own creatures die to get to ultimate because you can't actually plus Lolth, is -8. You get an emblem with whenever an opponent is dealt combat damage by 1 or more creatures you control, if that player lost less than 8 life this turn, they lose life equal to the difference. Okay, that's weird and stupid, but the 0 and the -3 are amazing.
Yeah, I mean, you play Lolth and you make 2 spiders, right, to start out with.
Mm-hmm.
She's down to 1 loyalty, but they have reach. Like,
she's
unkillable.
There's 2 of them. Yeah.
So how are they going to get through? And then if they trade off, which they do pretty easily, given the 2/1s, Lolth starts ticking up. Maybe it doesn't get quite up to 4. You start zeroing it to draw cards, and then you can sacrifice creatures. Just getting into combat's gonna get this going, and then just basically a never-ending spider engine. The -8 is pretty bad. It just makes it so your creatures always deal 8 to them.
Sure. Because that's the thing that you need at that point in the game, right? Yeah. It's like that's not really the problem.
But anymore. it's like Mordenkainen. Who cares that his ultimate is bad? His first 2 abilities carry, and in this case, Lolth, her first 2 abilities plus her passive are a fantastic package. I would give Lolth an A+. Like, it's just really hard to beat this card unless you have you get it, you kind of nip it in the bud and immediately kill it.
Yeah, the fact that the 2 spiders have reach is just a game changer. Yeah. It's just incredible. All right, Westgate Regent is next. It's 3 black for a 4/4 vampire. At rare, it's got flying and ward. They discard a card. So if they want to target it, they have to discard a card. So that's pretty strong. And then it says, whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you put that many +1/+1 counters on it. Which means, by the way, that it doubles. So it goes from 4/4 to 8/8. And then if it hits for 8, you get 8 more counters on the damn thing, and it's 16/16. So it gets out of hand extremely quickly. I've had a chance to play this card. The only downside with the ward is that if it doesn't cost mana, right, or life or something that like actually ends the game sooner, so they can discard a card and still just have a regular removal spell to kill it. But I mean, this thing is such a disgusting threat. Send your vampire, eat your heart out, right?
Yeah, I mean, you said it gets out of hand when it hits them. It's not really in hand to begin with. It's a 4/4 flyer that has ward.
It's already really good. Yeah, I would give it an A. I understand that it's not at that bomb level, but it is a threat in its own class. It is truly a game-ending threat that's difficult to deal with.
I mean, it kind of has Infect 5. You hit them once, it becomes 8/8. You hit them twice, they've taken 12, and it's a 16/16.
Right.
So I don't really see where the game goes that you lose that from there.
Yeah.
And it's got ward discard a card, so you're just going to get your 2-for-1. So yeah, A for Westgate Regent.
And our last black card is Asmodeus the Archfiend. This is 4 black for a 6/6 legendary creature, Devil God. Wow, is this the devil? It's a rare. It has Binding Contract. If you would draw a card, exile the top card of your library face down instead. You can pay triple black to draw 7 cards, and you can pay black to return all cards exiled with Asmodeus the Archfiend to their owner's hand, and you lose that much life.
So
this thing locks you down.
It is a deal with the devil, and Asmodeus is like the devil ruler of kind of like the evil plane.
Okay.
And I've played with Asmodeus, and I actually don't think he's that good.
Yeah, I played against it, and I felt the same way.
First of all, it doesn't have flying. These cards always look like they have flying. Asmodeus does not.
Totally.
So 6 mana, 6/6, a colossal Dreadmaw. But it's not just that you can pay black, and then another black to draw 7 cards and lose 7 life. You also put all your draw step cards there. Again, you made a deal with the devil. So every turn you need to pay a black to get access to the card you drew, and you lose a life. So it taxes you a life in a card or a life in a mana every turn. And then, yes, if you have enough black to then use the ability and enough life, you can get there. But I just don't think that's going to happen that often. So on balance, it kind of feels like a 6 mana 6/6 with a drawback.
It plays out that way too, particularly if you're under any pressure.
So one thing you can do, which you can activate the triple black ability and sack Asmodeus in response to like the Sepulchral Ghoul or whatever, and then you would just draw 7 cards.
The ability on the stack, gotcha, because they don't get exiled because he's gone. That's kind of cool.
But then you paid 6 mana for this, and then 3 mana and sacked it. You paid 9 mana over 2 turns to draw 7 cards?
Yeah.
Like, that's just not that good either. So no. I would give Asmodeus a D, and I'm willing to be convinced that there's maybe some decks that could use it better, but I haven't been impressed so far.
Same. And like I said, I actually played against it, and I thought, oh, great, here we go. And then it was like they paid the black, and it was like they got a bunch of cards. And I'm like, you're almost dead. Like, the constraint becomes mana. Right? Like it's almost the same thing as like draw 12 cards or 15. It's like you can't cast more than 2 of them in the next turn cycle, and I'm going to kill you. Right? Yeah. And also like the contract with this particular devil is you are never getting another card in your hand unless you're paying life. So keep that in mind too. If you're at low life total, you probably just can't even put the dang thing on the battlefield unless it's all you need to win the game.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's move to green.
Red?
Red. Excuse me. I went out of order. There we go. Tabs got messed up. Let's go to red. Minion of the Mighty is our first red card. It is red for a 0/1 rare kobold with menace. It's a scary 0/1. Everybody runs away from it. It has pack tactics. So whenever it attacks, with a group of power 6 or greater, you may put a dragon creature card from your hand onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking.
All right.
Can we build around F for this?
Yeah, let me just explain what needs to happen for this card to be good. You need to have this. You need to have 6 power worth of creatures. You need to have a dragon in your hand, and you needed to be at a point in the game where you couldn't just cast the dragon. Build around F it is.
We got there. Next is Orb of Dragonkind. Card's hilarious. It's 1 and a red for an artifact at rare. It says 1, tap it, add 2 mana in any combination of colors. Spend this mana only to cast dragon spells or activate abilities of dragons. It also has another activated ability. Red, tap it and sacrifice it. Look at the top 7 cards of your library. You may reveal a dragon card from among them and put it into your hand, and the rest go on the bottom in a random order. Nope.
Yep. Another build around F. Like, you just need too many dragons before this would be good. So
yeah, and it's only good for the mana ability, and it only adds 1. So no. Orb of Dragonkind, you get an F. Come on, give me something good here. How about Flame Skull? 1 red for a 3/1 flyer that can't block. By the way, this is a skeleton, and it's a mythic rare. It has rejuvenation. When Flame Skull dies, exile it. If you do, exile the top card of your library. Until the end of your next turn, you may play one of those cards. That's sweet. So your worst case is you just get this back?
Yeah, it's mostly going to be Flame Skull, but the times it's not, that means whatever you flipped over was even better. At a 3-power flyer, they can't really just ignore this. And yes, it can't block. It would be supremely obnoxious if it could. But all you need to be doing is like be halfway aggressive or even just mid-rangey. Like you can just play this by itself and yeah, maybe they take 3 hits, but at some point they have to do something about it. Really hard to kill this thing. Yeah. I would give Flame Skull an A-. Seems like a very strong card.
Yeah, I mean, I like the only scenarios where it really starts to stink is if they have like a 2/4 flyer. Like you got to kill that because otherwise Flame Skull can't really do much. Hobgoblin Bandit Lord is next. It's 1 red for a 2/3 Goblin Rogue. At rare. Other goblins you control get +1/+1, and you can pay red and tap it to have it deal damage equal to the number of goblins that enter the battlefield under your control this turn to any target. I assume this isn't a thing here, right? I mean, goblins isn't a pushed theme in this set.
Oh, this card's quite good.
Oh, actually, goblins are, right? There's that uncommon that makes them. Oh, yeah. I forgot about that guy.
It's not even that, too, though. It's also that the dungeon, the second level of Lost Mine of Philander makes a goblin.
Makes a goblin, and there's a die roll one that gives you goblins. Right. Okay.
I mean, think about it. This as like a 3-mana 2/3 that when you go into that one, you get a 2/2 goblin instead of a 1/1, and you can ping something for 1.
Sweet.
And you know what? There's other ways to make goblins. Like you said, the 5-drop goblins, swarming goblins can make, between 2 and 4 goblins. So a lot of ways to make use of this. And overall, yeah, it takes a little bit of effort, but I would say Hobgoblin Bandit Lord's like a build around B, and you don't need much. A couple venture cards, a couple goblins. You played a 3-mana 2/3 that has upside, and it doesn't need tons of upside to make it worth it.
All right. Build around B for Hobgoblin Bandit Lord. I'm sorry I disrespected you. Meteor Swarm is next. It's red X for a sorcery at rare. It deals 8 damage divided as you choose among X target creatures and or planeswalkers.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So the X is actually just the targets, but you're getting the 8 spotted.
So it's 8 total. And so the most common number for X is going to be probably like 2.
2. Where
you pay 5 mana and kill like 2 4/4s or a 5/5 and a 3/3. But sometimes you'll pay 6 and nug 3 things instead.
That's insane.
You can't hit your opponent, which is unfortunate. But it is a very, very good way to wipe the board. It costs triple red, but it's just so powerful that it's worth it. I would give Meteor Swarm an A because it's 5 mana, kill their 2 best creatures in most games with room above that more than below that. So like sometimes you'll play X equals 4 on 7 mana and go like kill your 2/2, kill your 2/2, kill your 1/1, kill your 1/1, kill your 1/1, or whatever it ends up being.
Totally. That's disgusting. And remember, red is the treasure thing too. So getting that, you kind of spot yourself the 2 red mana from your lance, but even getting that 3rd red mana shouldn't be a big issue. Wow. Yeah, I like A for Meteor Swarm. I'm
a little wary of the tactics displayed in the art where the mage is calling the Meteor Swarm down towards them. So I understand there's some restrictions on how you have to display things in a small piece of art, but that having cast Meteor Swarm in D&D, that's typically not the usage
those meteors are coming right at this guy. It's a problem. All right. What about Wish? What does Wish do?
Well, it's the most iconic, like high-level spell in D&D. Is a ninth level spell, the highest level. And here in Magic, it costs 2 and a red. It's a sorcery at rare. You may play a card you own from outside the game this turn. So it doesn't go to your hand. You just cast a card, in limited from your sideboard. But you have to cast it this turn, and you already cast Wish this turn. Ugh. And if the card's good, why isn't it in your deck? So F for me. I'm not going to be wishing upon a star here.
What does it do in D&D?
Whatever you want. It's Wish.
Oh, it's a wish. Like literally, I want something to happen.
It is exorbitant costs required to cast it, like 10,000 gold and diamonds, or some number of years of your life in previous editions. But you can kind of do whatever you want. You have to be careful with how you word it. But literally, what the spell does is you do what you wish for something.
Wow. Okay, that's pretty cool. Yeah, but unfortunately for us, that's going to be an F. Next is Zorn. This is 2 and a red for a 3/2 elemental at rare. If you would create 1 or more treasure tokens, instead create those tokens plus an additional treasure token. At least I had the misfortune of playing against this in a dedicated treasure deck. It was absurd. My opponent had like 13 treasure in like 2 or 3 turns. It was just crazy.
I played against this where they cast it, and I'm like, well, I could kill it, but it's so much more mana efficient if I play my 4-drop this turn and kill it next turn. And then they like made 2 extra treasures on their turn, and I was like, this was a mistake, wasn't it?
Yeah, I might have overlooked something. Yeah, you know, I actually can't remember what it was, but they had a black uncommon or rare that went with it, and the treasures were just completely out of hand. But at any rate, just on its own, this card's pretty good, right? 3 mana, 3/2, and some additional treasures can certainly be handy, and it enables some neat little combos to really kind of go off. You know, this to me looks like a B level card. I would give Jorn a B.
Yeah, I would also give it a B. And yeah, you don't have in the super deep treasure decks, it can be one of your better cards for sure. But most of the time, if you get like 2 treasures out of this, you feel like you got a really good deal.
Yeah, exactly. Next is Delina Wild Mage. 3 and a red for a 3/2 legendary elf shaman at rare. And whenever she attacks, you choose target creature you control and then roll a d20. So I assume that could mean her as well. 1 through 14. Man, we got a little curveball here. Create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of that creature, except for it's not legendary and it has exile this creature at the end of combat. And then if you roll a 15 through 20, create one of those tokens and roll again. So you get the thing before and then you get to just re-roll? Oh, wow.
So there's a Splinter Twin combo in this format where Pixie Guide is the 1/3 that lets you roll an extra die when you roll.
Uh-huh.
So you attack with Delina and you copy Pixie Guide. Then you roll 2 20-sided dice. And if either of them hits 15 or 20, you get to roll again, right?
Yeah.
So then you copy – well, actually, you copy it and you roll 3 dice immediately because you copied it plus the original.
Right.
So you roll 3 dice. If any one of those 3 hits 15 or 20, which you're a favorite to do,
right?
You make a 4th Pixie Guide and you roll 4 dice.
Wow.
And if you win – you roll it in 5 dice, and once you get to like 6 or 7 dice, you're just not going to miss, and you basically go infinite at that point. It's
That's really cool. That's sweet. I thought you were going to say the Luis Scott-Vargas method of just keep hitting 15.
No. I was actually kind of disappointed for my opponent. They had 2 Pixie Guides and this in play, and they chumped with the Pixie Guides instead of some of their other creatures, and they could have just gone infinite on me. I was like, wait, I think this is basically infinite, Matt Nass infinite. So it was pretty sweet. Plus, by itself, it's a 4 mana 3/2 that's often it's going to attack with a friend, sometimes multiple friends. I mean, this is one of the reasons to actually care about die rolls and to try to improve your odds, because very big difference between the 2 hits there. Overall, I think Delina is a B to start out with, but creeps up towards B plus A minus level the more combos you have.
Yeah, you know, I'm not a huge fan of the 4 mana 3/2 that like needs to attack to do anything and often just gets traded off straight away. So I'm starting a little lower, but like B minus B, and then I like the upsides too. Because I mean, you don't have to target itself, right? You can, if you have some dragon or whatever, you can double dragon them. That's a sweet card. I love that combo too. All right, next one is Zerial, Archduke of, what does it say? It's covered up.
Avernus.
Avernus, okay. They really kind of got a little aggressive with the whip covering up the text there. 2 red for a legendary planeswalker Zerial. This is mythic rare. 4 loyalty. +1 ability is creatures you control get +1/+0 and gain haste until end of turn. That's pretty powerful if you're aggressive. 0 is you get a 1/1 red devil creature token with when this creature dies, it deals 1 damage to any target. That's for 0. -6 ultimate, which is quite achievable here, is you get an emblem with at the end of the first combat phase on your turn, untap target creature you control. After this phase, there is an additional combat phase.
So once again, it's a planeswalker where I think the emblem is the weakest option. Mm-hmm. Like, once you takes the costs into account, because yes, getting to attack with a creature extra times just isn't that strong, because if you're successfully attacking, usually that's pretty good to begin with.
Right. That
being said, this is a 4 mana, 4 loyalty planeswalker that spits out red devils that are really hard to get through. 1/1s that deal 1 when they die are really annoying.
Yeah, they trade up for 2 toughness creatures at the minimum.
And then giving your creatures +1/+0 and haste means you can set up for some pretty big turns. So Zerial's good, not incredible, but good. You know, has some good stuff going. And if you can protect her from flyers, you're going to be in really good shape.
Yeah, that's kind of the weak spot. But the upside is that Zerial's only 4 mana, so she'll come down, you know, pretty early in the game when it matters. And then I really like the way that the modes work, right? It's like, if you're ahead in attacking, you're going to be like, play my creature, +1, ship the team, that type of thing. And if you're not, if you're at a parity or a little bit behind, you're going to be like, making a bunch of devils. You know, it plays itself out pretty cleanly in that way too. So are you thinking B+ to A- range for Zerial?
I would give Zerial to A-. The payoff, if you can defend it, is really, really strong.
Yeah.
And at 4 loyalty, sometimes you're just going to make a double. They hit it. Next turn, you make another double, and you know, not the end of the world.
Yeah, and really that +1 ability when you're on the play and your opponent's like a step behind is very punishing. I mean, really bad. You play your 5-drop, you plus this, it gets haste. All your other smaller creatures are bigger, and you're jamming with a squad. Like, that's rough. You know, because you can go turn 4, make a devil, turn 5, play a 5-drop plus this. Like, your opponent is way behind. And sometimes the best way to protect your planeswalker is by being aggressive. They can't afford to both attack your planeswalker and defend their life total at the same time. And Zerial really kind of hammers that. So A- for Zerial. Zalto Fire Giant Duke is next. It's 3 red for a 7/3 legendary giant barbarian. At rare, it's got trample. Wow, 5 mana, 7/3 trample. When Zalto Fire Giant Duke is dealt damage, venture into the dungeon. Dang! I thought that might be a little bit of a downside, but this is just all good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically a 7/3 trample that, you know, when it dies, venture into the dungeon, because like it's going to get dealt damage once in general.
Yeah. Trade off for their random 3/2. You get in for 5. You venture into the dungeon, and God forbid they don't have a clean block for it, right? I mean,
yeah, I'm medium on Zalto. This is one of the extremely rare occurrences where I would give a rare a C. I think that Zalto is just a C. I think if you care about venturing, it's solid. If you don't, it's a 5 mana 7/3 trample, and that's not like amazing. You play that, it's going to trade off for something. That's about it.
Yeah, I was going to go B. I mean, that's 7 power with trample. Like, if you have a removal spell, smash them. Like, that gets, you know, the pressure is really, I mean, it's a 3-turn clock on its own.
Yeah, there's just a lot of cheaper cards you're going to take over this. I think it's going to end up being picked more on the C level than the B level.
Okay, I'm a little higher on it than you, but I'm definitely picking up what you're putting down about the stats. I mean, 3 toughness isn't much. Last red card is Inferno of the Star Mounts. This is 4 red for a 6/6 legendary creature dragon mythic. So here's the red one. That can't be countered, and it has flying and haste. Holy crap. 6 mana, 6/6 flying haste. Can't be countered is not as relevant, but still. And then you can pay red to have Inferno of the Star Mounts get +1/+0 until end of turn. When its power becomes 20 this way, it deals 20 damage to any target. That's cute. That is really cute. But let's just focus on the good stuff here, man. 6 mana, 6/6 flying haste. That thing hits so hard.
Oh yeah, Inferno of the Star Mounts is, again, like the other dragons in this cycle, the classic mythic rare. 6 mana, 6/6 flying haste, uncounterable, and then it even has fire breathing. Just means the next turn you also get to hit for 8 or 10.
Yeah.
So A+ for Inferno of the Star Mounts doesn't really get much better than this.
Extraordinarily punishing card. That moves us to green. Our first green is a regular rare. It's Instrument of the Bards. It is green for a legendary artifact. It says at the beginning of your upkeep, you may put a harmony counter on Instrument of the Bards. You can pay 3 and a green and tap it to search your library for a creature card with mana value equal to the number of harmony counters on Instrument of the Bards. Reveal it and put it in your hand. If that card is legendary, you get a treasure token, and then you shuffle. So, I mean, you play, like, let's just go dream scenario. You play this thing on turn 1, beginning of upkeep. It's got a counter on it. You don't do anything. You curve out. You do your stuff. By the time you get up to your 4 mana, you've got 3 counters on the thing. You pay 4 mana, tap it to search up a 3-drop. That's 4 mana, tap, draw a spell, and it's not getting worse from there.
It's not even always going to go up, because what's going to happen, I think the way you want to play this a lot of the times is, because you may put a counter on, is you get up to 3, you use it to get a 3-drop maybe twice, and then you go up to 4, because the every time you go up, you cut off the possibility of any of the lower cards.
Equal. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you could always go up. So you kind of want to try to save it, but of course, sometimes you really want your 5 drops. You kind of got to race up to 5, and then just know you only get 2 more activations of this. Yeah, I think the card's fine. Getting a treasure off a legendary creature is also not 0. I mean, you get a slight rebate there. But overall, I think it's okay. I, again, think it's like a C-level card. Like, because imagine you draw this on turn 5.
Yeah, it's
like,
bad.
It only costs 1 mana, but you're still going to have to wait 2 turns to get a 2-drop and 3 turns to get a 3-drop and what have you. So I do think that there are decks that actually want this. It's funny, when we did the initial review, we talked about how like the 6 mana activation on the 2/1, where you get to draw a card, isn't something that comes up that much. Well, the one thing that I have noticed about the set is this does feel like the core set it replaced to a degree, where the games can sometimes drag out, and a card like Instrument of the Bards would be instrumental in winning some of those games.
Yeah, slow. Real 4 mana is so much, right? You're just taking entire turns off basically to go grab cards out of your deck. I just wonder, in a grindy matchup, that's amazing, and in a not grindy matchup, it's basically unplayable. I like C for Instrument of the Bards. I'm not actually that stoked on this. This is very, very clunky. It'll win you long games, but it's really clunky. Ochre Jelly. Green X for a 0/0 ooze at rare. It has trample, and as you might imagine, it enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. Okay. And it has split. When Ochre Jelly dies, if it had 2 or more +1/+1 counters on it, create a token that's a copy of it at the beginning of the next end step. The tokens enter the battlefield with half that many +1/+1 counters on it rounded down. That's great.
So the minimum you want to play this for is 4. X equals 4.
Mm-hmm.
Because at X equals 4, you get a 4/4 that dies into a 2/2 that dies into a 1/1, which is
right.
a lot of stats and a lot of annoyance for your opponents. And then, because it rounds down, you are kind of incentivized to avoid odd numbers, because X equals 5 still dies into a 2/2. And
right.
Of course, the bigger X you can get, the better. But I think a 5-mana 4/4 that dies into a 2/2 that dies into a 1/1 and has trample is pretty nice. If you have a way to distribute more counters, it can even get more of a benefit. Imagine this with like Ranger class. Not that card really needs help. And then, the fact that it's modular, where you can just sometimes you'll play this on turn 5, and sometimes you'll play this on turn 10 as like an 8/8, and then that is really annoying for your opponents. So overall, Ochre Jelly has seemed awesome. I would just give it an A. It's just a great card on 5 mana, a great card on 7+ mana. Just really hard not to get value from this.
Yeah, good place to put treasures, right? Temporary bumps really benefit this type of card. So there you go. A for Ochre Jelly. You just mentioned this card, Ranger class. What does this one do?
So this is one of those class enchantments. It's 1 and a green. Level 1 is when it enters the battlefield, make a 2/2 wolf token.
Great.
So it's 1 and a green for a 2/2. That is the floor. That is the absolute, you just cast the card, that's what you get. All right, great start. Level 2 is you pay 1 and a green, and to make it level 2, whenever you attack, put a +1/+1 counter on target attacking creature. So
what? Wow.
You play this on turn 2. Turn 3, you activate attack with a 3/3. Next turn, you attack with a 4/4. Like, this can single-handedly it can just solo your opponent. This card alone can win a game. And then level 3 is not bad either. You pay 3 and a green to get to level 3. And then you can look at your top card of your library at any time, and you can cast creature spells from the top of your library.
Gee, so it kind of carries you into the late game in case you ran out? Wow.
Well, it's good in the early game, it's good in the mid game, and it's good in the late game. All 3 levels are good, and it's very cheap, and it gives you material for nothing when you cast it. This card is an A+. It is a fantastic card.
Wow. Is that constructed worthy? Are we going to see that?
I think this card might be one of the few cards that can see playing constructed.
All right. A for Ranger class. I've had a little bit of experience with Werewolf Pack Leader, our next card. It's green for a 3/3 human werewolf at rare. It has Pack Tactics, draw a card. So that's pretty sweet. And then it also has an activated ability, 3 and a green. Until end of turn, Werewolf Pack Leader has base power and toughness of 5/3, gains trample, and isn't a human. So that makes it trivially easy to trigger Pack Tactics, because you can main phase that. And if you have literally any other creature with a power, you can slam in and get your card out of the deal. And that's kind of like a baseline. But you can do that anytime you want. So you can do it in combat. If your opponent chump blocks with a 1/1, you can turn it into a 5/3 trample and gobble it up. But really, this is one of the better pack tactics payoffs because it's GG for a 3/3, which is already halfway to pack tactics on turn 2. And it gives you the payoff that we really all want, which is to draw a card.
Yeah. Werewolf Pack Leader is awesome.
It's sweet.
Really just a good card at pretty much any point. I would give it an A-. I think it's a good card.
Yep, I agree. A- for Werewolf Pack Leader. I was able to really dominate with that card. Circle of Dreams Druid. This is GGG for an Elf Druid at rare, and it taps to add a green for each creature you control. It's a 2/1.
The casting cost here is just too much.
Right?
But by the time you can cast this, you don't really care that it adds 3 or 4 mana because you probably have 6 to 7 lands into play, depending on what your mana base is. If you were mono green, right? If the casting cost wasn't an issue, yeah, this card would be like a B+. Maybe an A-, just taps for 2 or 3 mana some of the time. But given that it's triple green, I would give Circle of Dreams Druid a D, and really only be interested if you somehow drafted like a 12 forest 5 swamp deck that was mostly green.
Long Rest is next. It's green X for a sorcery at rare. It says return X target cards with different mana values from your graveyard to your hand. If 8 or more cards were returned to your hand this way, your life total becomes equal to your starting life total, and then you exile Long Rest.
Yeah, this is not really a card fit for limited. The problem is, yes, you can get multiple different types of cards to get back, but you're talking now like green plus 4 to get 4 cards back, a 7 mana draw 4 or a 6 mana draw 3. That requires some setup, and sometimes you won't get the options you want, like you have 2 good 4 drops.
Right.
And you're not really going to pay it for 11 mana. Right. That's not too realistic.
It's too hard to get even that many different things. Yeah. I think the challenge, if you think this card looks good at face value, the challenge you have to face is at what mana rate are you happy? Right. If it's 4 mana to get 1 card back, no way. At sorcery speed, forget that. Right. So you're like, okay, well, I want some card advantage. 5 mana to get 2 cards back. That's probably the sweet spot. It's not great. Right? Yeah. That's not really where you want to be. And once you start getting to more than that, you're talking about scenarios that don't come up often enough to make it worth it. Yeah, this card just seems too clunky and the setup cost seems too high to me.
F for Long Rest.
Yeah. Sorry, Long Rest. We got work to do. Varus Silvery Moon Ranger. This is 1 green for a 3/3 legendary human elf ranger at rare. It has reach and ward 1. Man, these are really nice. 3 mana, 3/3 reach, ward 1 is great. Whenever you cast a creature or planeswalker spell, venture into the dungeon, this ability triggers only once each turn. Thank you, Wizards, for putting a cap on that. And then there's even more. Whenever you complete a dungeon, you get a 2/2 green wolf token.
Oh, yeah. I played with Varus, and Varus lives up to expectations. Very good. Like you said, right? It's a 3 mana, 3/3 reach, ward 1. Also, like kind of secret reach where the face of things you might not realize it. And then ward 1 makes it a little harder to mess with. Plus, it just gets you through the dungeon pretty quickly. And then when it does, it pays you off. Really not much more you can ask. I would just give Varus an A.
Same.
Like, it does all the things you want.
Right, and it doesn't ask anything of you. We were talking about the setup cost for Long Rest. There is none for Varus. It's good on its own, and then the setup cost is you have to have creatures in your deck? Okay, well, it's limited. You're going to have them. Really great card. Next is Eliwick Tumblestrum. This is 2 GG for a 4 loyalty legendary planeswalker Eliwick at Mythic. The +1 is venture into the dungeon. So nice and simple. 4 mana, 4 loyalty going to 5 is nice, but we're not, protecting anything here. -2 is look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card from among them and put it into your hand. If it's legendary, you gain 3 life. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So -2, draw a creature. -7, which is the ultimate, is you get an emblem with creatures you control have trample and haste and get +2/+2 for each differently named dungeon you've completed.
Eliwick has the kind of unique ability where her +1 could be as strong as draw 3 cards, play 1 for free. Like that,
right,
the best
depending on where you're at.
It could technically finish the Dungeon of the Mad Mage, making her just funny, like a banging +1.
Yeah. It really does matter where you're at in the dungeon, right? Like, because even +1 get a goblin is like so much better than, if you're just starting out.
Right. And that's the cool thing about Eliwick is, yes, her ability doesn't like intrinsically defend itself, but you can time Eliwick such that you play her on the turn where you can +1 into like the Twisted Caverns and make one of their creatures not attack, or give -4 attack, or make 2 skeletons, in the Dungeon of the Mad Mage, that sort of thing. So the fact that you can time it helps you. And then the -2 of draw a good card. Like generally, I think, assuming you have a reasonable amount of creatures in your deck, looking at the top 6 to draw a creature is better than just straight up draw a card. Because you're going to get some selection out of that.
A significant amount, yeah.
And then the ultimate's not nothing. If you've +1 3 times and gotten most of the way through a dungeon, like ulting and then giving all your creatures trample, haste, and +2/+2 the rest of the game is of course amazing. So overall, I would give Eliwick an A-. Like you need some venturing to go along with her. I don't think that this card's going to really perform at the highest value if this is your only venture card. Unlike Varus, right? Varus, we just talked about. You just throw him in any deck; it's always going to be good. Yes, Varus is better when you can venture, but outside of just him, but doesn't need it. Eliwick does need it a bit because you really want to be able to set it up such that you've already ventured and you play her to get one of the high value ventures, and then that kind of bridges you to your next turn. Because the key with Planeswalkers is always how do you untap with them in play? Because then you can set up more defenses. You can play a removal spell, play another creature, do whatever it is you need. So I would give Eliwick an A-, but I would look not a build around, because I think you could just put this in any deck, but will definitely do a good job if you can get some venturing going outside of just her.
What's on the artwork, the 2 things that I love? The little frog is just loving life, right? He's along for the ride. But what's that square? What's that square next to her guitar thing?
It looks like a card. One of the things that there's a magic item called the Deck of Many Things.
Oh, right. Okay.
And that's like, if you look at the kind of unexpected windfall, if you look at that art, that art is depicting someone drawing a card from the Deck of Many Things.
Okay. And by the way, that's going to be in this review, the Deck of Many Things as well. Okay. Yeah. AA- for Eliwick. Next is Froghemoth. 3 green for a 4/4 frog horror. It's rare. It has trample and haste. 5 mana 4/4 trample haste. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, exile up to that many target cards from their graveyard. Put a +1/+1 counter on Froghemoth for each creature card exiled this way, and you gain 1 life for each non-creature card exiled this way. Wow, that's sweet.
I mean, a 4/4 trample haste just comes out of nowhere, and then when it hits, if it's late enough in the game that they have a decent amount of creatures in their graveyard, this could become a 6/6 or a 7/7 just kind of out of nowhere.
Totally. And you can gain some random life, and you might even just exile their freaking library, right? I mean, it doesn't take too many hits to get them good if it's late.
Well, it's graveyard, not library.
What's that? Oh, it's from their graveyard. Oh, yeah. Okay, I missed that.
But that's actually stronger because you get to choose. So you can choose to exile all their creatures and grow this a bunch, or if you need life, you can just exile their non-creatures.
And of course, it's likely that there will be creatures in the yard at some point. That is sweet. Froghemoth.
I'd give Froghemoth an A-, just a really good rate card that, when you play this in a 3-game match and you play this and get them like on turn 5 where they didn't leave a blocker back, this is one card that really punishes you for not leaving a blocker back. They might play scared in the next game.
Seriously. Yeah, you could get some extra value from your Froghemoth without even drawing it. Next is Old Gnawbone. So this is 5 green for a legendary creature dragon at Mythic rare. And this is 7/7 flyer. So 7 mana, 7/7 flying dragon. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, create that many treasure tokens. This is actually on the lower end, right? Compared to the other dragons we've gotten.
Yeah, I mean, no, not as good as the other ones. I still think Old Gnawbone is good because it's a 7 mana, 7/7 flyer. Sometimes you'll play this and get a treasure token or two the turn you hit, and then when this hits, you can get 7 treasure tokens, so you have basically infinite mana the rest of the game. It would look to me like an A- as well. Just the way this set is, I think 7/7 flying vanilla would just be a good card. This isn't actually even that much better than that, because once you hit 7, getting a bunch of treasure is not huge. So A- for Old Gnawbone for me.
B plus, A minus. I really, 7 versus 6 is a big gap. It's 3-turn clock if left unchecked. So there you go. Old Gnawbone. Last green card is the Tarrasque.
The Tarrasque. And
the Tarrasque.
This is my biggest flavor disappointment in the entire set, because the Tarrasque is the most mythical, gigantic beast in all of Dungeons and Dragons. It's, described as something that lays civilizations to waste and almost impossible to kill, tons of abilities. And, well, we'll read what this card is, and you'll see if it fits that description. It's 6 green, 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 so 9 mana for a 10/10 legendary dinosaur Mythic. It has haste and ward 10 as long as it was cast, so no reanimation tricks. Mm-hmm. And whenever it attacks, it fights target creature defending player controls.
Is that where they lost you?
Yeah, I look at this and it doesn't seem like a civilization ending, ultimate threat. You had like
10/10's great, the basically you can't kill 10. It. Yeah, but then it's just like it picks off a random creature. Maybe I should have fought all the creatures they control.
Yeah, that would have like, if you made it like, what if it was like, same casting cost and like a 10/20 that fights all their creatures or something. Like, I don't know. Because its toughness is pretty legendary, but in any case, 9 mana is really tough. Yeah. And I think that there are some ramp decks that can actually use this as a legit finisher, but a 9 mana card, when are you casting this? Turn 12?
Yeah.
You're going to unless 13. You do a lot of work when it comes to ramp and have a lot of ways to get lands, you're going to end up in a spot where you just don't get to cast this until you've already kind of won the game, or the game is effectively over.
Yeah, a good way to look at this would be, when can you cast it, right? If it's going to take 9 lands, like if you're not ramping, that's over half the lands that you have in your deck, which means you need to get over halfway through your library. You start with 7. It's 13 to get to 20, so it's probably turn 14 or 15. If you're just relying on natural land drops before you can actually cast the Tarrasque from your hand. So that's not going to happen. That makes it a liability. So you do need to ramp. I mean, you got to have, treasures, anything just to get you to that bump. But I mean, holy crap, it's a 10/10 haste.
And it probably eats their best creature when you attack.
And it kills their best thing when you send it. Yeah. So basically this ends up being a build around. I would give it a build around A minus. Like, it is worth the squeeze, is whatever that sentence is. Juice is worth the squeeze. Yeah, but you really, seriously, do not put this card in your deck unless you have multiple ways to get mana onto the battlefield that you can use to cast it.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. It doesn't look that big either, by the way.
Yeah, I'm going to give him an F minus for flavor. Just doesn't do it for me. But I think A minus build around is fine.
Okay. So that moves us to our last couple. You want to do gold? Yeah, we'll do gold now. Okay. So our first gold card is one of, there's 5 of these, right? Classes? Yeah. 5 classes here. This one is at this rare level. They're all rares. They're all classes. So I'm just going to start blasting through them. The first one is Bard class, which is red green. Level 1 is legendary creatures you control enter the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on them. Not great. Level 2 only costs red-green to get to, and it says legendary spells you cast red-green less to cast. This effect reduces only the amount of colored mana you pay. Okay. And then level 3 is 3 red-green to get there, and whenever you cast a legendary spell, exile the top 2 cards of your library. You may play them this turn. All right, can we just move on?
Yeah, Bard class gets an F. All it deals with are legendary creatures. Right. Fighter class is red-white. And when fighter class enters the battlefield, search your library for an equipment card and put it in your hand. Okay. Mm-hmm. 1 red-white to get to level 2. Equip abilities you activate cost 2 less to activate.
Okay.
3 red-white. Whenever a creature you control attacks, up to 1 target creature blocks it this combat if able. So basically, it's 2 mana to go get an equipment. The level 2 ability is not great unless you're equipping multiple times over the course of the game, which sometimes will happen, but it's like you pay 3 now to pay 2 less this turn, but 2 less every turn, and then it lets you move things around multiple times in the turn pretty easily. And then the 5 mana level 3 ability is it lets your big creature kind of force a small creature to block it, which if you have equipment is probably a pretty good deal. So I think fighter class is solid. I would give it a B. If you've got equipment, you've got a bunch of creatures, you should put this card in your deck.
Okay. Yeah, and there's a lot of equipment in this set, so there you go. What about Monk class, which was our preview card?
It's a white-blue. The second spell you cast each turn costs 1 less to cast, so it gives you a discount when you're multi-spelling. You can pay white-blue to go to level 2, and when it becomes level 2, return up to 1 target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. So you pay this for 2, and then you spend 2 more, and you get to bounce anything. Mm-hmm. And then 1 white-blue to go to level 3, and it says at the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library. For as long as it remains exiled, it has, you may cast this card from exile as long as you've cast another spell this turn. So what happens is every turn a card gets exiled, they all have the same ability, which is you can't cast them as the first spell each turn. Mm-hmm. But it's not like one of those red effects that goes away. They just stay exiled. So let's say you play this and then you exile a 4-drop. Well, maybe you're not going to play that for a while, but at some point you might get to it. And then when you exile cheap cards, it's good. You can't play lands from it because you can only cast them. But it effectively gives you like about a half card a turn, maybe a little more than half a card a turn, I would say. Okay. So you get bounce a creature, this extra card ability, which actually works really nicely with the static of your spells cost 1 less.
Right.
So overall, I would give Monk class a B as well. I had this in one deck, and it was pretty solid. You didn't have to do anything too special to make it work.
Yeah, I really like that level 2 affects the board, right? Yeah. Like that's really critical to get you to a place where you can actually take advantage of the others. What about Rouge class?
It's blue-black, and these all cost 1 of each color. Like that's just the cycle. It's at the first level is whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, exile the top card of that player's library, and you may look at it as long as it remains exiled. Level 2 is 1 blue-black. Your creatures have menace.
Okay.
And level 3 is 2 blue-black. You may play cards exiled with a rogue class, and you spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast them. So basically, you play this, and your creatures start stacking up exiled cards, but you don't get access to them until you level to 2, then level to 3. It does let you play lands off them. Again, you just have to read each card because they're all different. Yeah. And lets you spend any mana as if it were any color, so you can play cards off their deck without worrying about being the same colors. And then level 2 of your creatures have menace. That's going to help obviously push the level 1. I think this card's okay. You have to have a lot of evasive creatures, which of course is the theme of blue-black, but it is a pretty long road to spend 2, start racking up cards, spend 3, give menace, maybe rack up more cards, spend 4, and then you get access to the couple cards that you've exiled. So
yeah. You just don't have a lot of room in your deck for cards like this. Like this could be the only one, but you really need to be getting things out of the way and playing creatures that can get through, and that doesn't leave you a lot of wiggle room for cards like Rogue class.
Yeah, I would give Rogue class a C+. I think that there are some games where it's going to be quite strong, and all your creatures have menace is really annoying ability. So
it is, yeah.
That part's nice, but overall, I think that it's really slow for what it does.
Yeah, agreed. Sorcerer class is the last one. It's red-blue. When it enters the battlefield, draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards. So you're at card parity, except for you're down the class here. You can pay red-blue to put it to level 2, which gives you creatures you control have tap, add blue or red, spend this mana only to cast instant or sorcery spells, or to gain a class level. Speaking of, level 3 is 3 blue-red, so 5 mana. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, that spell deals damage to each opponent equal to the number of instant and sorcery spells you've cast this turn. Yikes, that's a lot of setup.
Sorcerer class is just an F.
It just doesn't do a thing, right?
It just takes, like Bard class, it just takes too many cards that aren't naturally going to be in your deck to be good. And also, I really don't like when they do cards like this where it's like, level 2, creatures you control have tap to add blue or red to cast spells. So like, you're making a deck that has like Sorcerer class, has enough creatures, but then also has enough spells. Yeah. And then the payoff you get is your creatures become red-blue Llanowar Elves. I don't know. I'm not into it. I would give Sorcerer class an F.
Yeah, it's really strange to see the word creature on here, right? Like this is very clearly an instant or sorcery based thing, so it feels weird. F for Sorcerer class. Next is Triumphant Adventurer, which is black white for a 1/1 human knight with death touch. It's rare. As long as it's your turn, it has first strike. Nice. And whenever Triumphant Adventurer attacks, you venture into the dungeon. Is this the one that you first picked on one of your early drafts on your stream? Because I remember this card being a house for you.
Oh, literal first pick of the format.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, one thing that's funny is a 1/1 Death Touch First Strike beats anything in combat, but they can also just double block it. So be aware of that. It's not completely invincible. They block with 2 1/1s, and this will trade for one of them.
Right.
But attacking and venturing, like this is just the perfect white black card. It costs 2 mana.
2 mana, and it basically says venture once a turn for the foreseeable future, and yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I would give Triumphant Adventure an A. Just great. It's also a 2 mana 1/1 Death Touch on defense.
It is. That's like your bad case scenario. So there you go. A for Triumphant Adventurer. Next is Minsk Beloved Ranger. This is a Naya card. So it's red, green, white for a 3/3 legendary human ranger at Mythic rare. When he enters a battlefield, create Boo, a legendary 1/1 red hamster creature token with trample and haste. It has X. Until end of turn, target creature you control has base power and toughness XX and becomes a giant in addition to its other types. You can only activate this at sorcery speed.
This is not really a 3-color set, so as cute as this card is, it's not really something you're going to be able to reliably play. It is good though, because a 3/3 that gives you a 1/1 with trample that you can then spend 6 or 7 mana on and send it in as like a 7/7 or a 6/6 is pretty nice. Plus, it works on your other creatures as well. In fact, Minsk can actually make himself into an 8/8 if he really wants to.
Mm-hmm. If you had multiple red treasure producing cards that you wanted to play anyway, would you throw Minsk in a red green deck or a red white deck?
Yeah, I think it's worth looking at that if you've got the fixing. There is an Evolving Wilds in the set, so
there's kind of
the card is like a B+, but just casting it's going to be the difficult part.
Right. So if you can cast it, it's going to be a B+, but don't kill yourself to do it. Orcus, Prince of Undeath is next. The casting cost's a little weird here. It's X2 black-red. It's a 5/3 flying, trampling, rare legendary demon. And it says, when it enters the battlefield, you choose 1. Each other creature gets -X until end of turn, and you lose X life. Or return up to X target creature cards with total mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, and they gain haste until end of turn.
Well, you can always cast this for 4 mana as a 5/3 flying trample. So
great, which is probably the most likely, yeah.
Well, I think a lot of the time you're going to spend an additional 2 mana and just wipe the board of small creatures.
Yeah, that's true.
Returning creatures is not that likely, but it doesn't need this. I mean, Orcus is an A+ just based on the fact that it's a split card of 4 mana 5/3 flying trample / wrath / in the super late game. Maybe you play this and bring back a 4-drop and are really happy about that too.
And smash them. Yeah. I mean, but I'm telling you, if I'm red black and I'm feeling aggressive, I mean, on turn 4, I'm just playing this, right? Yeah. Just flampling them. Okay. A for Orcus. Next is Volo, Guide to Monsters. This is 2 blue-green for a 3/2 legendary human wizard at rare. Whenever you cast a creature spell that doesn't share a creature type with a creature you control or a creature card in your graveyard, copy that spell. I got a front runner here, Luis, for a card I still have to read when cast against me in the Sunset Show. What does this do?
When you cast a creature spell that it doesn't share a type with any of the creatures you've played this game in play or in graveyards, you get 2 copies.
Okay.
Very strong.
Very strong.
You have to look at your creature types because, this already says humans and wizards are off limits. And, a lot of creatures have duplicate types. But the first time this guy sees a new creature, you get a copy of it.
So, if I cast a dragon after this, I just get double dragons.
Oh, yeah. Double dragon indeed.
Okay.
I mean, it's a 4 mana 3/2 they have to kill because every turn it's presumably going to be generating some value. And maybe sometimes you'll run out of creatures to play that aren't multiples, but just you cast this and then cast an owlbear next turn.
Yeah, that's obscene. And this checks both the graveyard and the battlefield.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But I would give
Volo
an A-.
A-, yeah.
It's a 4 mana 3/2 that just provides massive value. It doesn't even just draw you a card. It draws you a card and casts the card. So yes, you're going to have to maybe make some choices when it comes to which creatures you play in your deck. But even if this only works on 2/3 of your creatures, it's still really good.
Yeah, it's also one of those cards that makes your brain think of doing this multiple times, but you probably don't need to, right? Like that very simple scenario that you described as a game-winning scenario. You untap and you play Owlbear, and the game's kind of over at that point, right?
And you got 2 4/4s and drew 2 cards. And of course, that's one of the better case scenarios. But
it's a common, right? Isn't it?
The other thing is, like, what if you had a bunch of the same creature type in your deck? Well, he still copies the first one, as long as it's not human or wizard, because that's what he is. But if you had 3 wolves in your deck, you drew all 3, Volo still copies the first one.
Yeah.
It's still pretty good.
That's pretty sweet. Yeah, I like B plus A- for Volo Guide to Monsters. That's really strong. I love the name of this one. It's just called Adult Gold Dragon. It is 3 red, white for a 4/3 flying lifelink haste dragon at rare.
Great card.
Me up. Sign me up.
I would give A- for Adult Gold Dragon. It's a very good card.
It's another must kill. They really kind of leaned on the must kills. These are killable, right? Like when we say must kill, we're saying, yes, you totally can. I mean, we just talked about a 3/2. This is a 4/3. These are very killable cards, but if they do not, they can't raise a flying lifelink haste. Like they can never beat you in combat with that.
Yep.
Next is Drizzt. Drizzt? How do you say that?
I've also said Drizzt, but again, I've mostly seen these names written, so I'm not canon here. But
I guess I'll say Drizzt. I don't know. Do-Urden? Okay. Anyway.
Drizzt Do-Urden is 3 green white.
Thank you.
For a 3/3 legendary creature, Elf Ranger at rare, has double strike, and when he enters the battlefield, create Guinevere, a legendary 4/1 green cat creature token with trample, and whenever a creature dies, if it had power greater than Drizzt's power, put a number of +1/+1 counters on Drizzt equal to the difference.
So when bigger things die, it grows, and you get a 4/1 token with trample.
And a 3/3 double strike.
That's insane.
A lot of power, a lot of toughness, and a lot of upside over the course of the game. So, yeah, I would give Drizzt an A.
So for example, if you play Drizzt and then they kill the cat,
Drizzt gets +1/+1.
It'll get a counter. Wow.
That's just a 4/4 double striker. Yeah.
Also, I think it is worth noting that Drizzt has the very special ability not flying.
Yeah.
I know when you look closely, you can see what's going on in the art, but at a glance, it looks like it's flying. So,
also of note, it says whenever a creature dies, not just one of yours. So if you play this and then kill their 5/5, Drizzt attacks as a 5/5 double strike.
Okay, that's amazing. Wow, that must be an important character. Like they pushed that one. That's a regular rare.
My best guess is Drizzt's the most well-known D&D character. There's like a series of books after him and all that. So,
okay.
But,
well, he got there. Congratulations. This next card, oh my God. I got swarmed by this one. Skeletal Swarming, 3 black-green for an enchantment at rare. Each skeleton you control has trample, attacks each combat if able, and gets +X/+0, where X is the number of other skeletons you control. Okay, that doesn't sound great, but at the beginning of your end step, create a tapped 1/1 black skeleton creature token. If a creature died this turn, create 2 of them instead.
Oh man, this card, super good flavor because it plays out the way it's named. Like, you play this, you get a skeleton, maybe 2 because you had a creature die, and then next turn you attack and your opponent's like, well, you're attacking me with 2 2/1s. Well, okay, I guess I'll take 4, and then you get another one, then they're all attacking as 3/1s, but then you're like, well, no, I got to do something about this, and you like make some kind of block. You're like, okay, well, I get 2 skeletons now. Now they're all 5/1s, and
right.
Like, it kind of self-fuels both because it gives you 1 every turn, but also if they're not blocking these things, they're dying really quickly. So they got to block, which means you get more skeleton because it doesn't care whose creature died this turn, including like you attack with 2 2/1 skeletons into a 3/3. They take 2 and kill one of your things, but then you get 2 skeletons. Now they're all 3/1s.
Right. And they keep coming. This to me is one of the biggest flavor wins. Really, I would use this card as like a case study on how flavor works. You know, there's those, there's video games and there's other games where like you have to beat the zombie horde, right? It just keeps coming at you and you have to like manage how to beat this on like a shooter or something like that. And little things like the skeletons enter the battlefield tapped, right? They just kind of flop onto the battlefield and don't do anything. And on their turn, they rise up and they come running at you in this rush and you do whatever you're going to do. And then all of a sudden there's more of them. And the next turn they rise up and they come running at you again. And they're mindless, right? They must attack each turn. It's just perfect. It's also a pain. This card's really good. Like I died to this bad. And I thought I was doing okay. And it was like, no, you're going to lose to this really badly. I got smashed by it. So I think it's actually really good as well as being flavorful.
Yeah, I would give Skeletal Swarming an A plus actually.
Yeah, I mean,
because
I didn't stand a chance, and I had a bunch of removal.
It's an enchantment that wins the game quite quickly if they don't deal with it, and it's really hard to deal with enchantments.
Yeah, there you go. So A plus for Skeletal Swarming. Next, I got to know this one. So this is Xanathar Guild Kingpin. And this looks like the happiest beholder ever. 4 blue black for a 5/6 legendary beholder at Mythic Rare. At the beginning of your upkeep, choose target opponent. Until end of turn, that player can't cast spells. You may look at the top card of their library anytime. You may play the top card of their library. You may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast spells this way. That's sweet.
This card is really, really hard to beat because if they play this and you don't kill it, on their next turn, they're going to look and they're going to be like, well, you have a good spell, I'll cast it because that's the first thing you'll do.
Right.
But if you don't, they'll just say go. And like, yes, you can play the top card. So if you have a Xanathar in play and their top card's a land, you can play it if you want.
Okay.
And then if you see another good card, you can play it. Or what you could do is just not play it and know they're drawing a land.
Oh, this card's you can just leave it there?
Against.
Oh, no. Wow. So now the worst feel bad in the format is Xanathar. Take a look. You can keep that like the old Jace days. Wow.
Yep.
And it's also just a 6 mana 5/6 that's, I mean, this is like the Godfather, right? It's like pulling the strings on the game from behind the scenes. This is sweet.
Oh, yeah. So Xanathar definitely lives up to the name. Like, I think this is a very flavorful card. He just got the spy network. He controls everything from behind the scenes. Also a pretty tough opponent in his own right. And then the fact that you either get to play cards off the top of your deck and get a bunch of value isn't great. Or you could just, like I said, say go and know they're drawing something bad that doesn't deal with Xanathar. Like, think about this scenario. You cast Xanathar. Your opponent untaps and doesn't kill it. Okay, they don't have a way to kill it because obviously you kill it. If their top card doesn't deal with it, frequently the best play is just going to be to not play it.
And just keep running it. That's incredible. I love it. I like A for Xanathar Guild Kingpin.
I would give it an A+. It's a 6 mana 5/6 that just wins the game if they can't kill it.
Unreal. It's also got some Jabba the Hutt vibes going too.
Oh, yeah.
Last gold card is Tiamat. It's 2 and Wooburg. So that's 1 of each color plus 2 for a 7/7 legendary creature dragon god at Mythic. It's got flying. So 7 mana, 7/7 flying, but I mean impossible mana unless you're really treasured up. When it enters the battlefield, if you cast it, search your library for up to 5 dragon cards not named Tiamat and that each have different names, reveal them and put them in your hand, then shuffle. All right, well, this is fun for Commander or whatever. And this set actually does make it so that you theoretically could cast this spell, but unfortunately they don't make it worth it, right? Because you're not getting any other dragons usually.
Yeah,
maybe one.
I wouldn't go through the bother of casting Tiamat.
Yeah, I think it's just an F.
It looks like an F to me. Once in a blue moon, you'll have enough treasure or 5-color fixing to maybe be worth it, but it's more a meme card than anything else. So I would avoid Tiamat if I were you.
All right, that's the last of the gold cards, but we've got a few lands and artifacts left. This first one is called Cave of the Frost Dragon, and it's a land at rare. It says, if you control 2 or more other lands, Cave of the Frost Dragon enters the battlefield tapped. It taps for white mana, and it has an activated ability of 4 and a white. Cave of the Frost Dragon becomes a 3/4 white dragon creature with flying until end of turn that's still a land. So we've got some creature lands here.
Yeah, they all have the same cycle of they enter tapped unless you have 2, if you have 2 or more other lands. So they all basically enter tapped. If they're in your opening hand, if they're your first land or second land, they're not tapped, but a lot of them enter tapped. Mm-hmm. And we'll go through each of them, but they're all solid. Some better than others.
This one seems very strong, right? 3/4 flyer, like that can end the game.
Yeah, I mean this one is probably the best one.
Okay,
maybe the green one.
Let's take a look at so that one's really good. Like I would give that a B. Like I would play that card really happily.
Yeah.
The red one it's 3 and a red. Until end of turn, it becomes a 3/2 red goblin creature token with whenever this creature attacks, you get a 1/1 red goblin creature token that's tapped and attacking. That's pretty strong too.
Yeah, I would. I mean, the way to think about these lands really isn't like would I play them? The answer is of course. You would always play them. The worst one is the black one, and you would replace probably 4 of your swamps with them if you could, Hive of the Eye Tyrant. Mm-hmm. But the question when we give a rating is more like how high should you pick them? And for Cave of the Frost Dragon, Den of the Bugbear, the ones we've seen so far, Cave at like a B, Den of the Bugbear at like a B- level, I would say.
Agreed. Yep. And then the next one is Hall of the Storm Giants, which is the blue one. So its ability is 5 and a blue, and it becomes a 7/7 blue giant creature token with Ward 3.
Again, that's like
still playing it.
That's like a B. Like you get to hit with a 7/7 out of your lands.
Yeah.
Like,
now you do need 7 mana, right?
Yeah, 6 plus this.
Yeah.
You do need to take a turn off to do that, but it's well worth it because when you have this in play, if they ever go down to like 10, all of a sudden you're like, all right, activate this attack with this and my 3/3 flyer.
Right. It's also interesting that you can do it on blocks, right? You could just be like, go, hold up some good instant, and they're like, well, I can't just send my 4/4 in. Like, you could just activate.
Yeah.
That's cool. Hive of the Eye Tyrant is the black one. It's 3 and a blue, 3 and a black, and until end of turn, it becomes a 3/3 black beholder creature with menace, and whenever this creature attacks, exile target card from defending player's graveyard. Okay, so that is the worst one, right?
Yeah,
but a 3/3 menace is still pretty good for 4 mana. Really, actually, that's great. Like, I almost feel like I'm docking it because of the not so relevant extra text, but 3/3 menace is like, that hits hard for only 4. Like, that's probably better than Den of the Bugbear.
I would say they're comparable. I would say they're both kind of like B- level.
Okay. And then the last of that cycle is Lair of the Hydra, which is the green one. And you can pay green and X, and until end of turn, it becomes an XX green Hydra creature. X can't be 0.
Yeah, so you get to just activate this and whack them with
whatever you got left over.
5/4/4, 5/5, 6/6. And the thing is, you generally don't activate any of these until you have nothing else to cast because they don't really add to the board. I guess the Goblin one kind of does. But by the time you activate are doing that, Lair might be a 6/6 or a 7/7.
Right. I also like that this one allows you to like play, like if you have a bunch of mana, you could be like, play a 3-drop and then dump the rest of my mana in to get in for another 3 or whatever.
Yeah, I would give Lair of the Hydra a B+.
Yeah, so I like all of these. These are definitely in the B range. So consider that when you're drafting, because remember, you get that extra benefit of having effectively an extra draft pick by taking a land here. You got Dungeon Descent at rare. It's a land. It enters the battlefield tapped. It taps for colorless, and you can pay 4 mana, tap it, and tap an untapped legendary creature you control to venture into the dungeon at sorcery speed.
Yeah, they were really scared of this ability. This card's an F because it costs 5 mana plus a legendary creature. Like, this is terrible. So I'm not into Dungeon Descent.
No, it's a real liability to put a land that only makes colorless as well. Next is Treasure Vault. This is an artifact land at rare. It taps for colorless, and you can pay XX, tap it, and sack it to make X treasure tokens. That's kind of cute.
I think it's quite bad. It's again a colorless land. So you can get up to 7 mana and make 3 treasure tokens by sacking this.
Yeah.
And then what? You give up your land for 3 treasure tokens and spent a whole turn doing that. So F for Treasure Vault from me.
Eye of Vecna is next. This is 2 mana for a legendary artifact at rare. It says, when Eye of Vecna enters the battlefield, you draw a card and you lose 2 life. Ouch. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may pay 2. If you do, you draw a card and you lose 2 life. Boy, I'm all for repetitive card draw, and I like that it gives you something straight off the bat, but that 2 life's going to add up really, really fast.
I think that the way to use this is in a deck that is really aggressive, and that this is the way to convert that extra life you have into cards, or a deck that can gain a lot of life. Like a life gain deck could potentially use this, because the life gain decks, what tends to happen is they gain so much life, their opponents are like, okay, I'm not going to worry about killing you, but I'm going to try to kill all your stuff and then kill you because you're at 27. Eye of Vecna does a really good job of letting you turn that life into actual, resources.
Yeah.
So I would give it a build around B, but I'm just saying you have to do something to make it so that you can spend this life and this mana and not get punished for it. The average mid-range deck is okay. Would not put it in control decks because losing 6 life to draw 3 cards is not a good deal for a deck that's already using their life total as a resource. But I think the life gain deck's probably where I'm the most excited about this.
Okay. Next is Hand of Vecna. It sounds like Vecna got had a bad day. 3 mana for a legendary artifact equipment. You're going to equip somebody else's hand. It's
well, I mean, look at the art for Eye and Hand of Vecna. Like, look at the people who want to use these artifacts had to do.
Yeah, they're not super classy. It's a rare. At the beginning of combat on your turn, equip creature or a creature you control named Vecna gets +X until end of turn, where X is the number of cards in your hand. The equip cost is 2, and you can also equip pay 1 life for each card in your hand rather than paying the normal equip cost. Well, this is tough, right? Because that's powerful. You know, giving a creature +3/+3/+4/+4 is good, but this is only on the beginning of combat on your turn. So it's only an offensive. You can't use it to like make a big blocker or something like that. So if that's the case, it's very aggressive. But I mean, you could pay 3 mana. You've got 4 cards in your hand, pay 4 life to equip, and then slam with a creature that's +4/+4. That's a lot.
I mean, imagine you play a Null Hunter on turn 2, play this, equip, attack, pack tactics already.
Plus counter it up, yeah.
I think in an aggressive deck, Hand of Vecna has some of those high roll openings when it's in your opening hand. It's pretty bad off the top of your deck, though.
Really bad, and really bad in any other deck, really. I mean,
so I'm like overall wanting to give this a D, though I know that some aggro decks are going to be able to use it well.
Yeah, maybe build around C+ for the aggro decks or something. I mean, it does hit really hard if you don't care about your own life total. 2 more cards. One of them is, well, here's another one of those ones, Luis. Treasure Chest, right? Like, it's just, you got to stick the landing here. It's 3 mana for an artifact at rare. You can pay 4 mana and sacrifice it to roll a d20. 1. Oh, so if you roll a 1, it says trapped. You lose 3 life. Oh, man, they have a whammy? Oh, boy. 2 through 9 is you create 5 treasure tokens. So that's you finding the treasure. 10 through 19 is you gain 3 life and draw 3 cards. Wow. And the 20 is you search your library for a card. If it's an artifact card, you may put it onto the battlefield. Otherwise, put that card into your hand and then shuffle. Which is strangely worse, but... Yeah,
funny instance of 20 being worse than 10 through 19.
Yeah. One trapped is brutal. Like, what, do you fall into the whole thing?
Like... I think it was a wise design decision to not have because 1 is a critical failure when you roll a 1.
Oh, okay.
To not put that on any other card because it would be really obnoxious if all your cards just had a 5% chance of not working.
Yeah.
But putting it on exactly 1 card, having it be treasure chest, having it be a trap chest.
They nailed it. They nailed it. So if we ignore the 1 and the 20, interesting that these 2 things, the 2 through 9 and the 10 through 19, are very different. Right, one of them gives you this huge mana, kind of temporary mana advantage, and the other one is like just great, right? Draw 3 cards and gain 3 life. 10 through 19 is definitely the sweet spot. The question is, are we happy if we pay 3 mana for treasure chest, 4 more mana to sack it, and then we get 5 treasures?
No. So that's a disappointing outcome, but gain 3, draw 3 is pretty good. Like, paying 3 + 4 mana is probably comparable to paying about 5 or 6 mana total, in terms of like how easy it is, when can you do it. And draw 3, gain 3 for that is a pretty good deal.
It is, but I mean, we're getting that less than half the time, right?
Yeah, well, so we're getting that one
45%er,
45% of the time, and you're getting the treasure tokens like 40% of the time or something, right. Or 45% of the time also. So, yeah. Overall, I think treasure chest is like a C. I think if you put it in a slow deck, it's okay, but you are going to be pretty disappointed if you roll 1 through 9.
I think it's an F. Like, I'm not putting this in my deck. Like, I'm just not going to, because like,
yeah, I'm not that interested in it, I suppose.
Yeah, like, you're not dumping 7 mana, even if it is priced out, and just being like, well, here's 5 of it back, and you should feel lucky you didn't happen to lose 3 life this one time. Like, no way. I'm not playing treasure chest, but it is sweet. Last card is the Deck of Many Things. You mentioned this one before. So this is 5 mana for a legendary artifact. It's mythic. And it says 2, tap it, and roll a d20 and subtract the number of cards in your hand. If the result is 0 or less, discard your hand. Wow. And it has 3 other outcomes. 1 through 9, return a card at random from your graveyard to your hand. 10 through 19, draw 2 cards. And if you hit the 20, you put a creature card from any graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. And when that creature dies, its owner loses the game. Whoa. So you want to have an empty hand here, ideally?
Yes. I mean, you can't roll a 20 without an empty hand. Mostly, you're going to want to draw 2 cards rather than return a card at random from your graveyard. But there's some times when you wouldn't mind returning a random card from your graveyard. It's basically 5 mana artifact. That's 2 tap, draw cards, sometimes draw 2 cards, and then 5% of the time you basically win the game because you get to.
Because they can't attack you anymore.
You put a creature out and play from their graveyard, and then if it dies, they lose. So there's a lot of ways to win from that situation.
Right. That's cool.
Yeah, I think Deck of Many Things is awesome. I would give it an A.
Do you spin the wheel if you have 4 cards in hand?
Yeah, I mean, I think so, because if you have 4 cards in hand, you have a 1 through 4 discard your hand, but then the Deck of Many Things starts to pop off after that. The other thing though is, a lot of the times when you have 4 cards in hand, you probably have better things to do than activate this.
Right, just to dump those cards.
You start activating this when you're like out of other things, mostly.
Yeah, that makes sense. I like it. I like A. I mean, I don't care. This card looks like a value engine to me. That's sweet.
Realistically, you're never going to pass this card. So.
Right, agreed. Okay, that's going to do it for our Rare and Mythic Rare set review here for Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. Very cool. What early grades would you give them for flavor, Luis? Did they nail it?
Overall, I'd give them an A for flavor. Like, yes, I have some like gripes about like the Tarrasque or what have you, but overall, I think that this set was very clearly made by people who love D&D. Like, whether that was, I don't know if that was some of the designers or some of the people they got for like concept design, or they had enough people on the team, because I don't expect everyone on the team to have played D&D, but they have enough people on the team that they stuck the landing, as you said, on enough of the flavorful cards that it has the ring of authenticity from it, and I have to give them a ton of credit for that. I will give them an unqualified A for flavor. As for gameplay, I still think it's a little too early to tell. I've enjoyed my first run of drafts, but Same. I can't really name a format besides something like Ixalan or Abyssin Restored where that wasn't true. But that when a format's that bad, you get this sinking feeling after your 3rd draft,
yeah,
right?
You're like, this is not. I have, yeah.
You're like, oh my god, this is terrible. But in this particular case, like it seems fine. I'm not willing to give it an A yet, but I'm also not going to give it like a D. Like it's going to be solid. I don't know where that's going to fall. Like even Dominaria, we didn't realize was an all timer until a little later in the draft format. So don't know about that. I know for flavor though, they did nail it.
Awesome. That's great. Yeah, we'll have our first impressions next week. If you want to find us on social media, let us know how the set's treating you, how you like the flavor. Marshall_LR is my name, and Luis is just LSV, basically everywhere. Twitter's kind of the main thing for Magic. If you want to find out more about the show, lrcast.com has links to everything. We mentioned the Patreon earlier, CFB, all that kind of stuff. You can find links to that as well as our streams. I stream once a week. Luis streams multiple times a week. You can watch us play. And you can find links to all of that
usually
kind
at the same time.
Yeah, you always counter stream me. That's why.
You always counter stream me.
No, come on. My chat has words for you on that one. But yeah, you can find links to all that at lrcast.com. I did mention CFB. Make sure you head over to Channel Fireball for all your Magic needs. If you want to get your hands on some Adventures in the Forgotten Realms, go to Channel Fireball. That's the place to go to get all the latest and greatest. And as I mentioned before, if you do end up picking something up, whether it's CFB Pro or some Adventures in the Forgotten Realms or some supplies or whatever, if you use the affiliate code LR, I do appreciate it. It lets them know that we sent you over, and thank you for doing so. That's going to do it for this one. We'll have first impressions next week. We'll see you then.
All right. Well, since tournaments aren't really a thing anymore, I wanted to give you a tournament report here. But it wasn't an event that I played in so much as some birria tacos that I enjoyed. So,
oh God, the ones from the chat. Oh my God.
So me, Marshall, and Chion have a group chat, which is, I think, dominated by food discussion is appropriate. Like, we talk about plenty of things, but food discussion is definitely one of the things that goes on there. And for those of you who haven't heard, the latest like craze in food, it's very Instagrammable, is birria tacos. That's BIRRIA. And what that is it's typically like, the real authentic one is actually supposed to be goat, but it's often beef as well. It's like kind of stewed, so it's kind of like soft, think consistency of a pot roast, for example, that sort of thing. And then they make queso tacos, which is like they take usually corn tortillas, and they put in cheese and the beef, and they like fold them over but griddle them so the taco's kind of crispy. Those are both melted. And then here's the thing that really made it pop off. This is what the money shot is. It's served with consomme, like a broth with like, you know, green onions and cilantro and lime and like a beef or goat broth. So kind of like a French dip. It's like a Mexican French dip, and you dip the tacos in the consomme, and they are unbelievable. The reason that this came about was like I had heard of them, and I kind of went like, oh man, I want to try these. I haven't tried them. And then Paul's like, hey, have you guys had birria? And then he's like, and we were like, no. And then he's like, all right, well, he goes and he like posts a bunch of pictures. He eventually posted them on Twitter too. And I'm just like, then later I'm like, ooh, you know what? I'm going to do this. So I ordered from a place here, and it was actually a place that was called El Consomme, the something, but it had consomme in its name.
Oh, so credibility.
That's a start. And then the tacos came. It's delivery, so you know, we started off with basically a round one loss because we had to get it delivered, but it was late at night. I wasn't going to go out, you know, because this is what we're talking like, you know, something you want best served hot. But to their credit, they got it over quickly, and it was all still, you know, pretty hot. So I look in there, I add a little more lime to the consomme and into the tacos, dip them, and the combination of crunchy taco, melted cheese. Some of the cheese is kind of melted on the outside too, you know, like that clearly hit the flat top there.
Oh yeah.
With the hot consomme with like the lime and you know, the experience, like 3 tacos, it was excellent. I would have to I would say we made top 8 there. It was one of the better events I played in recently. And
oh man.
If you get a chance to try one of these, I would recommend it, because the other thing is, pretty much all the places that have it are going to be kind of like hip or happening places at this point, because it is, like I said, a very trendy style of food. And you know what? Sometimes that kind of stuff can be pretty bad, but like in this case, I have to say it's a good trend. It's not one of those nonsense ones. And I was quite impressed with the result. And you know, A+ would birria again.
Pure torture, by the way, having to watch your guys' pictures.
That's part of the enjoyable part of it. Just so you know.